On there, but it also works because they all have like short page. Yeah, that's together.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your patience as we got the outside room set up. It's always a pleasure to welcome a full house into our council chambers here. It suggests that there are diverse perspectives to hold and passions to negotiate. So I look forward to this meeting. I'd like to begin by acknowledging with deep respect that we are gathered on the unceded and ancestral territories of the Squamish Nation. The relationship to this land and water surrounding the Nicollet and Bowen Island is ancient and enduring. We honor their ongoing leadership, especially in respect of Reconciliation Day, which we have not been able to acknowledge yet in the council of the municipality, due to not having a meeting because of the UBCM. And I just also like to take a brief moment to acknowledge the passing of Chief Bill Williams, a remarkable leader whose influence reached far beyond the Squamish Nation. He was a teacher, diplomat, a cultural bridge builder, and a friend to many of us. His legacy reminds us of the responsibility we carry in gatherings such as these to listen deeply and work together with humility and respect. So condolences to the Squamish, to Chief Bill Williams and his community. Also, congratulations to the incoming Squamish Council, who was just elected very recently as well. And with that, I'd like to welcome everyone to the Bowen Island Municipality meeting of Tuesday, October 14th, 2025, and thank you for joining. I'm Andrew Leonard, the Mayor of Bowen Island Municipality and the chair of this meeting. I'd like to begin by introducing, as I always do, the other elected members of our council here today. Starting on my far left, we have Councillor Tim Lake. To his right is Councillor Alison Morse. To my far right is Councillor and Islands Trustee Sue Ellen Fast. To her left is Councillor and Islands Trustee Judy Getty. Joining us online today is Councillor Alex Jorgensen. We are also joined by several members of our professional staff team here today, including our Chief Administrative Officer, Kieran Dillon, our Corporate Officer, Sophie Insignia, as well as other members of our staff who may be presenting reports and presenting agenda items here this afternoon. This meeting is being recorded, and when members of the public speak during the public comment and question and answer portion of the meeting, your voice and presence will be included in the permanent recording, which will be available at bowenislandmunicipality.ca and also kept on our YouTube channel, where it is live streaming now to the masses and where you can review it later. This council meeting is an official forum for the conducting of the business of local governments. We all love our home. We are all passionate about what happens in this community. I'd encourage everyone to maintain a constructive and respectful tone during the public comments and question and answer portion of the meeting, and to direct those comments and questions to myself. For those following along online or in the room, the agenda and full council package for this afternoon's meeting is available at bowenislandmunicipality.ca and includes all of the attached staff reports. And with that, I will look to the corporate officer for the introduction of any late items on our agenda today.
Yes, the roundtable package was circulated earlier by email, but we have one roundtable submission from Bruce Russell just in support of his delegation, and that's distributed paper to you. And regarding item 7.1, 1355 West Side Road, there are 6 additional letters from the public that came in over the weekend. In regards to item 12.12 or 12.24, there were 11 additional letters received regarding removal of the cougar from Bowen Island. And 12.25, there were 6 additional letters received regarding non-removal of the cougar from Bowen Island.
That I would be looking to adopt the agenda and light items for this meeting. Councilor Morris.
I was wondering, in the interest of time, if we should be deferring item 7.6 and 8.1 to a future meeting. That get there or
Yeah, let's see how the meeting goes. We get to that point. Depending on the sentiment. Yes, Councilor Fast.
I move adoption of the agenda as presented in the minutes.
Okay, moved by Councillor Bass, seconded by Councillor Leitch. Any further discussion, changes, amendments? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye. Aye.
Audio now
Aye.
muted.
And that carries unanimously. Moving on to public comments. I'll look for a corporate officer. How many public comments do we have today?
We have 12.
We'll go a little bit longer. So for those who have been here before, welcome back. For those that are here for the first time, welcome. The busy public comment section. So each speaker will have a minute and a half to make their comment. If you haven't been here before, 15 seconds, 20 seconds before your time ends, you'll hear a beep or buzzer from our corporate officer. That's just to encourage you to make your final points, your final asks to council. Your time does not start until you're sitting in the chair, comfortable, take a deep breath. I know that for some folks it can be stressful, but we are here to hear you for your full and allotted time. Okay. And with that, we will have a first speaker.
So we have Tarmy Williams and he is on Zoom.
Hello, Mr. Williams. I think you might be on mute.
There we go. I believe I'm unmuted. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to chat with you. I've been a longtime resident, half-time resident in reality, throughout the entire year on Bowen Island for now close to 20 years. And feel that it's important to consider the wishes, that the council consider the wishes of an important portion of the community of Bowen Island by sending a demand notice to the government of BC to remove the mountain lion roaming our island and disrupting our lives accordingly. Now, I know I represent a lot of the area that I live in, which is Hood Point. And on the other hand, I know I speak for approximately half of the island. And the other half, of course, perhaps have the other point of view. But I know I speak for 100% of the deer, as they too want to get rid of the island, the lion on the island. So the presence of this lion in our communities completely altered the way we live our lives. And no one walks their dogs anymore, at least not comfortably or at all, alone, not even in the daytime. Children no longer walk from one house to another to visit friends without an adult chaperone. No one plays kick in the can in the evening, a long-time tradition, or builds forts in the woods or messes around on the playing fields. Teenagers meeting up and forming lasting friendships safely at night, not even with an adult overseeing them. Not that adults would be welcome anyway. There's really no defense against a cougar, except prayer perhaps, and this was a community of trust and freedom such as rarely exists in cities anymore, and I know that, having lived in both. Everyone here takes care of everyone's children and each other, and I'm talking the whole island here. But the cougar has destroyed that for good, and that was a real priceless thing, being able to have a safe community to walk around in. So I'm not going to take my whole time. I just want to point out, please request and get this lion removed from the island. And I'm calling him a lion because he is a mountain lion, and he's making everyone nervous and really changing the way of life. We'll never get 100% agreement on anything, but I think it's important that you, the council, represent the island by giving this letter to, requests saying you recognize half of our island are for, half perhaps maybe against, but we do speak for all of the deer as well. And let's get the island, the mountain lion, off the island. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Next we have Frank DeVerrier.
I will
first read Andre's posthumous letter, which was mailed to you in last November. Response to a petition about the planned tiny village in our neighborhood. Your worship, ladies, gentlemen of the council, we would like you to be aware how concerned we are by the publicized project of a tiny home village at 1355 West Side Road, proposed in the most strongly way by Cameron Roth on the property he acquired some years ago from Christine Mill. At the present time of affordable housing shortage on Bowen Island, such an ideological strategy may appear appropriate to many islanders in the comfort of their proper residence in undisturbed and idyllic locations. What is wrong with the romantic presentation of Cameron Roth is the choice of location where he believes that he can realize his financial dreams of a monthly revenue of over 34,000 in excess of other for rentals accommodation already on the property and a storage facility of over 30 units of mini storage containers. We were the very first to settle on the Sunset Estate subdivision when West Side Road had not yet been built 36 years ago. We had the time and the opportunity to learn about all the characteristics of the dead-end environment of our small community of 15 residences. All the properties on the south side of West Side Road are in a large part in the floodplain that supplies Grafton Lake, subject to extreme variations of water flow through the seasons. When Hamish and Christine Miller bought a 10-acre property at 1355 West Side Road to develop a horse riding facility, the major difficulty was to manage the excess of water coming from Mount Gardner and going across the properties below and across West Side Road. There were many years when the horses could not go through the property deep in water.
You are at time. We would be happy to receive your letter and read it. I know that it's been sent in previously. Thank you very much.
Next, we have Brian Buckingham.
Welcome, Mr. Buckingham.
Thank you. To Mayor and Council, I'm just gonna read this letter because you probably all have it, but I'd like to put on the record. Regardless of which of the planner's alternative actions council adopts about the proposed redevelopment of 1355 West Side Road, I feel strongly that one issue requires immediate intervention. At the September 27th open house for the prematurely advertised West Side Village, Cameron Roth made the following statements to the attendees. This property is just over 10 acres and there are currently 4 residences on the property. And we are hoping to add 34 small homes to make a total of 38. On a 10-acre property, that equals about 4 homes per acre or just under 4 homes per acre and gives a land allotment about a 1/4 acre per residence. Second statement, there is a map available from the table over there. The site plan is on. This is intended to be a representation of what we think the layout might be, but this is far from exact. Although the density in all cases will be quite similar. These statements are extremely misleading to the parties contemplating having a home lot at 1355 West Side Road. It directly implies that each tiny home will be situated on a plot about a 1/4 acre. Upon review of the proposed plots on the applicant's published map, it is impossible to believe that each pad is surrounded by the remainder of 1/4 acre. The proposed plots cannot be anywhere near 1/4 acre in size. And if you have the letter there, you can see the scale drawing of what a 1/4 acre is versus the size of the proposed pads for the tiny houses.
Mr. Buckingham, unfortunately, you are at time right now.
Rolf's second statement clearly states that the map indicates, while not definitively, the density in all cases will be quite similar to that map. In their misguided attempts to generate support for the imagined proposal, the proponents, politely stated, are grossly misrepresenting the size of the individual plots to many unsuspecting people. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Buckingham. I know that we did receive the letter from here today.
Next, we have Margaret Underhill.
Ms. Underhill, thank you for being here.
Thank you for being here too. I would like to comment on the current applications for 1355 West Side Road, Lot 7 Adams Road, and Seymour Bay in the context of recent presentations to council on the subject of surface water and groundwater recharge. The West Side Road and Adams Road properties are both in the Grafton Lake watershed in areas of high to very high critical recharge. Seymour Bay application relies on the continuing ability of Josephine Lake to supply sufficient water for already approved development, as well as for a proposed additional 151 residences. Over the past few months, Bob Turner and Rosemary Knight made presentations to council on the topic of surface water and groundwater and the necessity of including these considerations in municipal land use planning. On both occasions, there was much discussion by council, by municipal staff, Mr. Turner and Ms. Knight, on potential actions that could be taken to protect the Grafton Lake watershed in particular and island water resources in general. And yet, we find ourselves with 3 rezoning applications in the works, with the potential to add 42 new residences in the West Side Adams Road area, 34 of them at 1355 West Side Road, 8 at Lot 7 on Adams Road, in addition to 151 new residences at Seymour Bay, drawing on Josephine Lake. As the OCP Review Committee proceeds with its work, it is clear that Bowen Islanders are intensely focused on issues such as water and the overall capacity of Bowen to absorb more residents. Decisions should not be made on any of these applications before the OCP Review Committee has completed its work and a new OCP finalized. I sincerely hope that both Bowen Island staff and council are already engaged in the necessary work to monitor and protect the water resources of the island before it's too late. Thank you. Sophie, your chime is almost inaudible even here. I don't know if you have any ability to make that louder, but we don't want to overstep our welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Cameron Grohl.
Ralph, thank you for being here.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Cameron Rolfe. I'm the proponent of the West Side Village rezoning application at 1355 West Side Road, which I believe is being presented to council today. About a month ago, Bob Turner and Rosemary Knight made an excellent presentation before this council outlining the importance of the Grafton watershed. The importance to the Grafton watershed of the area in which our development's situated. When questioned by mayor and council, they suggested development in this area needn't stop, but rather careful monitoring should be in place. You can't manage what you can't measure. And at West Side Village, we agree. We started a groundwater monitoring program about 9 months ago, and it's in place today. We are able to manage groundwater because we are measuring it. In the wake of this presentation, some people have concerns over septic systems within the Grafton watershed. And it's been said there are about 200 systems in this area. Some might be surprised to hear that the effluent that leaves new engineered septic systems is indistinguishable from the surrounding groundwater. I'm just going to repeat that. The effluent that leaves modern septic systems is indistinguishable from the surrounding groundwater. That is the absolute minimum baseline for these modern systems. To me, what's much more worrying is the 30, 40, and 50-year-old systems that are elsewhere in the watershed with no monitoring and no checks or balances. When West Side Village moves ahead, one thing you can be certain of is that the wastewater system will be perfectly engineered. These are new systems. These new systems are abundantly reliable, have sensors and alarms to provide warnings in advance of problems, and they're built to an extremely high engineering standard. In the same way, the structural engineering of this building is done to a reliably high level, such that we gather here with no concerns of structural failure. That's the same level of engineering that these septic systems are built to. The new systems should not be a concern for contamination. These systems are perfect. It's the old, unregulated systems that are of much greater concern. Thank you for being here today.
Yes, I think you read from a written presentation.
That was going to be my next point. If you'd like to submit that to mayor and council, we
I'd be happy to. I needed to edit it for time. Who should I give it to, or should I send it in?
Our corporate officer can reach out, or just mayor and council at bimbc.ca. And I know that we're just at the very first initial steps of this right now, so I'm sure we'll see you in front of council in the future.
I look forward to that.
Next, we have Bruce Harris.
Mr. Harris, are you here with us today?
I'm just here to speak briefly on the ferry issue. I've witnessed some significantly hazardous episodes last couple of years, both standoffs between drivers and trying to get in the line and or pedestrians trying to hold them back. Incidents while the road construction was going on in the summer up the freeway out here, where there's total chaos going on. Absolutely, BC Ferry should be subsidizing the expense of having traffic control persons. One person is strictly token in my mind. It is not effective enough to worry about the section all the way from down where the ferry comes in up to this intersection here. Probably need 2, maybe 3 during high volume areas. And probably should reach for more public outreach on other people's experiences and what they think should happen. I personally think anyone coming over here to commercial region should be paying extra, either at the terminal or with the licensing to subsidize the cost of traffic monitors. But you've got a serious safety issue on this island. And places like South Spring Island have sections off to the side that are strictly for parking, like in Horseshoe Bay. If Bowen can't establish that, they need to have multiple people monitoring traffic on busy days. Yeah, thanks. Thank you very much. That's good.
Next, we have Paul Buck.
That's good.
All right, Mr.
Harris.
Harris.
Mr. Harris. Item 6.1 in our agenda today is dedicated to notice of motion that's been put forward about all those items with respect to BC Ferries. So there'd be a lengthy discussion.
Yeah, I'm gonna stick with that. Thank you.
Paul Whitecott.
Thank you for being here today.
Thanks for allowing us to speak here, and I speak on regarding the cougar issue, and I speak on behalf of a group called Wild Neighbors Organizers, who are in favor of peaceful coexistence with this animal. I'll read a letter that we've written together. Dear Mayor and Council, we wanted to share a final update on the Wild Neighbors petition before today's meeting. As this morning, there has been 390 signatures on the in support of the coexistence with the cougar, this beautiful and growing show of care from people who love this island and wilderness that defines it. The petition arose in response to a call for immediate humane removal of the cougar. We wanted to make sure another perspective was heard, one that reflects the belief that living on Bowen means living with nature and not apart from it. We understand that the fear many of us have young children and pets. We walk the same trails and live on the same forests edges, but fear can't be the thing that guides us. This cougar has lived quietly among us for over 2 years without incident. The BC Conservation Office Service has the clear definition: there is no current public safety threat, and relocation is often problematic. These are facts that we can trust, and we must listen to that. There have been 5 cougar attacks that have resulted in a fatality in the last 100 years in BC, and many communities live in close proximity to cougars that have far more sparse food source, making it far more dangerous. For many of us, this experience has been a reminder of what it means to live here on an island where the forest is alive, where deer cross the road at dawn, where the wild still has a heartbeat. The cougar has asked us in its own way to remember that. We're grateful to Council for hearing our open minds and hearts and having open minds and hearts. And there is more than this is about more than a single animal. It's about who we are and what kind of relationship we want to have with this land. Thank you.
Thank you for being here today.
Andre Shalat, and we're gonna.
Sorry, I reversed the order. I'm having problem with the length of my letter and it's all technical.
Okay.
And therefore, I will start by the end and try and make it, but I don't think all my points will be read and they're highly technical. So I think we should, I would have liked to have a little bit more time.
So just before we start the timer for clarity, is this a letter that's already been submitted to council?
If you have it.
Okay,
Yeah. But you're going to discuss things about it
Yes.
without knowing that you've read it. You haven't read it because I just submitted it.
you just submitted, it. Okay.
Yeah, I submitted it this morning.
Right, and so just for peace of mind, know that it will be included in everything regarding.
Yeah, I know, but if you're going to discuss today, then sometimes you need things. So, your worship, my name is Anne Ferrière and I live at 1425 West Side Road. Your worship, ladies and gentlemen of the council. As a retired professional geoscientist, I'm submitting these comments to express my technical concerns regarding the proposed zoning at 1355. And I will start by my recommendation and then I will read my comments. Given the multiple uncertainties, and I express uncertainties that I identify, I recommend that council defer considering of the rezoning at 1355 West Side Road until completion of the OCD review and after completion of a detailed West Side Laura Road neighborhood plan. Commission an independent municipally-led hydrological study of the whole of Bowen Island to assess cumulative groundwater impacts and long-term water availability, and especially the impact on all the neighborhood deep wells. I think this is very important. I don't want to be providing water to somebody else. Require the technical verification of mapping accuracy, foundation design, and tree impact plans before proceeding. Because as I'm saying, the well from Christine Miller is plotted 50 meters away from the reality. So I think there's quite a lot of problems. Mapping and surveying consistency. I compared the consultant drawings and noticed a 45-degree discrepancy between the north arrows on sheet 1 of Mr. Lightbody, map 1 of 11 of geotechnical concern. This raises question about the reliability of the mapping. Hannah Martin's figure in today's report correctly shows the north orientation and includes a reliable bar scale. Only one of the rezoning maps includes such a scale, which is essential to determine actual distances.
Madam, you are at time right now.
Okay, well, what I'm saying is that the little houses are 2 to 5 meters apart. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here today.
Hmm?
Thank you for being here today.
Next we have Carol, and I'm sorry. Is there a Carol? Or it's Carol. Okay, move on to Drew Burgess.
Mr. Burgess, are you here today?
You gotta speak louder, because I'm old and deaf.
Oh, aren't we all? Or some of us.
Minute and a half, right?
Yes.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, climate change, hotter, drier summers, warmer winters, our precipitation has changed from thousands of years. 8 months of steady rain that filter down to support the aquifer and the rainforest that we're so familiar with. There's an increasing frequency and intensity of atmospheric rivers that are much more common now. These flooding events do not filter down to the aquifer. The water runs off as fast as possible. No amount of septic engineering can guarantee against failure, especially in these events. These waters will wash their contaminants directly into the lake. Unfortunately for West Side Road, they're right in the middle of a very critical recharge and collection area for this lake. Birch has secured 24 acres of Lot 1 for affordable housing. This is a far more suitable area for a small home community. We have an obligation to ensure the safety of the watershed for the majority of Bowen Island residents.
and that takes precedence over the few who may be dissatisfied with their current accommodation. Thank you.
Thank you for being here today.
Jennifer Allen?
Is Alan, are you with us here today?
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you. I wasn't really prepared. It's my first time in neighbors, but I also support letting the cougar live among us in peace. We've had no incidents, and people see the cougar, but it's very shy. And even people I've talked to have come close to the cougar. It takes off when there's approached by human. Cougars do not want to interact with humans, and there's a plentiful food supply for the cougar here. And I mean, people in Lynn Valley live with bears in their backyard and cougars. And I think point is that I feel safe and I feel blessed to live in this kind of nature that can support this majestic animal. And the indigenous value the animal as a way of maintaining the ecosystem in balance. So, yeah.
Thank you for being here today.
Andy Pullen?
Plan? Oh, okay. Thank you for being here today. Thank you.
I just wanted to comment on the rezoning application for 1428 and 1430 Euclid Road. At the last council meeting where this was discussed on July 28th, there were some concerns that were raised. And I've since sent an email to Daniel and forwarded to council, or will be attached in the report that he will share with you later. I just wanted to quickly reiterate that since the beginning of this project and even my house construction, we have always worked with the Bowen Island municipality to obtain all of the required permits. I've worked with half a dozen engineers on the project to make sure that we are designing and building everything to the requirements of the municipality, and also with future risk mitigation in mind to put in place measures that will reduce any land erosion to the best of our ability. So I just wanted to mention that. And also there was a question about the water supply for the project. I believe it was Councillor Morse at the last council meeting. So I just wanted to briefly touch on that. I have worked with the provincial government to obtain a groundwater license. I have also worked with Vancouver Coastal Health and civil engineering to design a small water system, which is adequate in supply and quantity of water for the project. And that's how we propose to service the proposed projects. So thank you.
Thank you for being here today.
So that is the end of the list for public comments.
Got a question or?
Well, unless Carol has come back, Carol Manson.
Thank you everyone for being here today. It's public comments, when we have a lot of them, just to comment on the process a little bit, when you've only got 90 seconds in front of council, it can feel like it's rushed, and the nature of how they're structured and legislatively doesn't allow us to have a lot of back and forth communication from council to the commenter. I know that many of you have spoken to individual councillors out in the community. I've spoken to many of you folks as well. And I just wanted to presence and appreciate the passions that we get to work with in this community. So in the last 20 minutes, we heard on issues of housing, land use, and wildlife management, and watershed management, and density. And everybody here showed up, take time out of the day to make that happen. So there are conversations we're interested in having. I just want to thank everyone for being here. It can seem short, but I know that council is always willing to have ongoing discussions outside of the structure of a council meeting. So feel free to reach out to have conversations with us. I get stopped on the ferry and the general store all the time. So, just wanted to presence my appreciation for you all being here today. So thank you. Moving on to Section 3 delegations, 3.1, we have Bruce Russell joining us here today regarding the cougar on Bowen Island. Mr. Russell, do you want to join us here at the front, please? Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Time limit?
You've got about 10 minutes and then 5 minutes if there's that want to questions, comments, discussion.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon to council, staff, and the fellow audience members. My name is Bruce Russell, a Bowen resident of 83 years, speaking on behalf of the concerned citizens for the immediate and humane removal of the cougar. I note with interest an animal environmentalist had a posting on a social media a few days ago appealing for signatures to keep the cougar on Bowen after challenging our group's extensive efforts for its immediate and humane removal. The conservation officer and councillors' decisions to remove it or allow it to remain therefore boils down to two simple questions. Is the safety and well-being of the cougar more important than that of us residents and visitors? And secondly, what do these two authorities feel is in the immediate and best safety interest of the community? I have no hesitation in suggesting that all of us like-minded residents who want the cougar relocated, not unlike those who want to remain, equally think it to be a very beautiful animal. But it is out of place on our apex, predator-free, small, highly populated island. It does not belong here and should be in a habitat in which cougars are the norm and where it could possibly find a mate. We definitely do not want a second cougar of the opposite sex in our community, which is its non-immediate removal could easily permit. As to our 14-month concerted effort for its immediate humane removal, a few observations are in order. Number one, 229 residents signed our August 15th undercurrent open cougar letter. Secondly, our advocacy group has not simply complained about the cougar's presence and being allowed to remain an unwanted visitor. Over 14 months ago, I advised both BIM and COS our group would be only too happy to incur the cost for its humane removal. Clearly, we want to be part of the solution, not just complaining about it. And in response to those who suggest relocation of an apex predator is seldomly successful, I suggest setting aside the law of the jungle. Such a priority concern for the well-being and safety of this abnormal visitor unquestionably places the cougar's well-being and safety ahead, above, and more important than that of us residents and visitors. Flawed and questionable thinking, to say the least. Preserving our apex predator-free community is far different than requesting the COS to create such a zone, and if they are reluctant to do so, then our requesting council to show the leadership required for the cougar's immediate removal by way of sending a letter to the conservation officer is most reasonable and in order. To date, our futile, ignored efforts for the humane removal of the cougar suggests, in the opinion of COS and council, the safety of the cougar is more important than that of us residents and visitors, which is totally wrong. Hence this further appeal to council that they do the proper thing and send the requested letter to the conservation officer. In conclusion, I suggest it is not reasonable or fair to learn how to live with the single. It is not reasonable or fair for the 10,000 plus summertime residents and visitors to be required how to live with the cougar. Pardon me, my apologies. I've changed it since we started. It is not reasonable or fair for the 10,000 summertime residents plus visitors to be required how to learn to live with a single misplaced apex predator. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. I'll look to council for questions, comments. Not seeing any. So a couple of points from the chair, just in response to the comments here, I think it's important to remember, so it seems like there's an intersection between the conservation officer service and the municipality. So there's a notion that it's the conservation officer and the municipality that has authority to do anything with the cougar. Right.
We don't understand it. We understand clearly
Right.
the municipality does not have the legislative authority to remove the cougar.
Okay.
We clearly understand and we accept that.
Okay.
However, we do not think the municipality has done everything legislatively possible to have the cougar removed if you refuse to send a letter requesting that of the conservation officer. That's our point.
Okay, so I'm just curious then, in terms of things being legislatively possible, what legislative elements is the municipality missing under current legislation that we can take action on with respect to the cougar that your group would like to see?
Can you not send a letter to the conservation officer requesting for the well-being and safety of the residents of this community? Can you not send a letter requesting the removal of the cougar?
Okay.
That's.
Maybe what I'll do, I'll ask that, because I know that we've had many ongoing conversations with the Conservation Officer Service over the last number of months, and I understand that we've had a very detailed conversation with them just about a week ago, where we asked them directly about the notion of private trapping and removal of the cougar, as well as their policies regarding destruction of the animal versus translocation or relocation of the animal, and sort of the policies around that, as well as some of the jurisdictional pieces of how the conservation officer responds both to public inquiries as well as municipal inquiries, and the types of action that they'll take. So maybe I'll turn it over to our CAO to speak a little bit more about the conversations that have been happening on the staff level and some of the pieces that we're considering moving forward.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So I did reach out to the Conservation Officer, Conservation Office Service, specifically Mr. Gravel, who's been dealing with this file locally, and asked them what their process is for removing a cougar. And they say it is based on actual evidence. So if an incident occurs, they will investigate it. And 99.8% of relocations usually result in the cougar's death. Cougars are very territorial animals. So if the male cougars move from one territory to another territory, they're likely the existing male that's within that territory is going to fight with this new male to the death. And so that's what it means. So they don't make the decision to relocate lightly. It's based on actual evidence. And so even a letter from the municipality asking for the cougar's removal, if it's not tied to a specific incident where something had occurred, warranting their investigation, even that alone would be not enough for the Conservation Office Service to act. So it's really depends on a specific incident which has not occurred. So even hypothetically, a letter from the municipality in and of itself, without a specific linkage to an incident that's occurred, would not prompt any action from the Conservation Office Service.
Can I reply?
Sure.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think there was a form of stalking yesterday in the Blue Water area. I'm not too sure what the definition of stalking is, but this trail user saw a cougar on the trail, and as this trail walker moved along, the cougar moved along and kept pace with them. I think that has to be considered a form of stalking. Number two, I think there's a major oversight here. This island has been apex predator free. I'm 83 years old. I've been here all my life. I do not recall there being a cougar on the island. And if there was one, it was here for a very short period of time. Not allowed to remain for 24 months, terrorizing and traumatizing some members of this community, especially up in the Hood Point area. There's been a number of awful sightings, not stalkings, where the cougars have actually killed deer in people's yards and the people have had to sit there and watch them consumed. Now, the conservation officer says the cougar is just doing what the cougar does naturally. Well, I challenge if it's natural for that type of conduct to happen on an island that has a king predator-free reputation. And that's the point. I noticed the conservation officer says it's not their mandate to create cougar-free zones. We understand and we appreciate it. We're not asking them to create a cougar-free zone. We had a cougar-free zone. We just want him to respect and restore that. And God forbid, if a second cougar of an opposite sex finds its way to the island, the same as this cougar found its way to an island, I need not carry on any further with that conversation, because we certainly won't be worrying about one cougar. We'd be concerned about a number of cougars. So why tempt fate?
Yeah, and ultimately that would be a provincial decision from the conservation officer and the ministry to take action on. So with respect to the incidents that we have heard, I know that our staff regularly passes those on to the conservation officer service. Our role, again, we don't have disposition authority over relocating cougars, destroying cougars. Given, I think, and I'm speaking only from the position of the chair right now, what we're seeing in terms of the opinions in the community. I mean, there's two petitions here to coexist or to remove or to translocate or destroy the cougar. I believe that our position as a municipality is to hold the spaces where we can have those perspectives heard, respond to them in the most evidence-based ways that we can, and to continue to communicate with the conservation officer service so that they can enforce wildlife as per their jurisdiction and their guidelines and their own evidence-based processes.
Well, again, I seriously am concerned and question why the conservation officer seems to feel it's okay for the whole makeup of this island to be changed by the arrival of one cougar. And I think it's almost criminal that we might have to leave it to a serious stalking incident where injury or death occurs to a human being for somebody to say, we think we better remove the cougar. If it has to be dead, it has to be dead.
Yeah, over to Steph.
Yeah, so through the chair, there's a lot there in the comment. I just will address one matter I did specifically ask the conservation officer service about the fact that had there been cougars in the past on Bowen Island or black bears, and they did have documented case in the past where cougars have been present on Bowen Island and bears as well. And from their standpoint, these animals will migrate to different territories, and the whole decision on how they manage the wildlife is based on actual incidents that occur and not perceptions around what could hypothetically occur. And I unfortunately didn't ask how many cougar attacks have occurred across North America in the past year, but it's a very low number, relatively speaking. So that's essentially that's what where they stand on this issue, is that there have been cougars in the past on the island, and unless there's an actual documented case, they're not going to act on that. And if somebody was to proactively seek the relocation of a cougar, that would require a water, land, and resource stewardship special permit to do that. And they're unlikely to issue one based on the fact that there has been no documented actual case currently.
So I think something that's worth looking at as I hear the conversation unfold, and it's certainly unfolded over the last week for me in my inbox and out in the community as well, is there's a tension of perspectives here, right? There's like various groups that want us to do something. There's pieces that we've heard from the conservation officer, and what I've been wrestling with in my mind is what is the proper role of the municipality in this? If we're not, going to take any particular side or move into any particular advocacy other than doing what we have done in terms of public education, in terms of communicating with the conservation officer service, and we've hosted the conservation officer here previously. But I think there are pieces that we can do that residents want answers from that we can't necessarily give them. So what I would maybe look to staff at this point, whether it's our CAO or manager of parks and environment, is it feels as if there's a role for the municipality here to act as a convener. So that residents, from whatever viewpoint, can have their perspectives heard and fielded by the appropriate authorities in the appropriate way. So what I'm wondering is about inviting the conservation officer, possibly some experts in the field, and having an event here at the municipality where questions can be asked and answered by the professionals, by the folks that have the proper authority, that they can hear directly face to face from residents on all sides of the spectrum, because I would be interested in that conversation as well. I'm reserving any of my personal comments here, but I live on an island. I knew that I was coming to a wild island, but I have kids and chickens and a dog that I've certainly changed my behavior from as a result of having a predator on the island. And, I struggle with the way forward. And ultimately, I think it needs to be put in the hands of folks that have the authority. So, maybe I'll just look to staff for comment as to whether we can host an event like that where we have invite the conservation officer, invite some experts in the field, where community members can show up face to face and have that interaction with those folks.
Thank you for the question, Chair, and I may ask for our manager of Parks and Environment to supplement whatever I say. It's just very in tune with this topic, but in discussion with Officer Gravel, he's more than happy to come and educate the community on how to coexist with the cougar and talk about issues around attractant management, cougar behavior. We have done a previous session on this, but we can always continue to do education, and he'd be more than happy to be a part of that education process. He did mention, and hands up if anybody knows this individual, but there might be a resident cougar expert, Meg Toon. If you're here, that could be somebody we can coordinate with to maybe set up this education around living with cougars, attracting management and cougar behavior. So yes, we can certainly set that up and provide additional resources on our website as required. And our manager of Parks and Environment, if you have anything like that to.
Thank you. He's right here.
Yeah, we can see that in the gallery. Thank you. Over to Ms. Goose.
Thank you, through the chair. We did set up a Q&A late last year with an expert from WildSafe BC. WildSafe BC is mainly provides education, and they are closely affiliated with the Conservation Officer Service, and that's their role in individual communities. So I believe we can have the same person come again, or Meg Toon has offered to help us with education within our community here. She was WildSafe BC coordinator for many years, I believe, with the moving here. Very put you on the spot. And then I've also been talking to some different providers for doing bear spray training on the island as well. It's a really good training where people can practice with an inert spray, and maybe that will help people feel more comfortable and on the trails. They're interested in that training, so hopefully we can provide that for the next month. We just had difficulties with the availability of trainers, so. Very nice.
And it feels as if there's two components. So I'm hearing the education side and bringing in educators for the sake of awareness, but it feels as if there's a need to host a bit of a public forum, moderated discussion piece as well, where community residents can really have their concerns heard in a face-to-face way that's backed by the municipality, and that everybody can be present to that. that feels more like the appropriate role for us is to be the convener and host the place where we can have difficult conversations. But it has to be, you know, I'd be really interested in having the authorities and the experts here in the room so that, you know, points like Mr. Russell's or points like those from I think the Wild Neighbors organizers can be heard and negotiated at the same time. Yes, Mr. Russell.
Is the council aware of the fact that cougar has now been sighted in Snuck Cove?
I believe, I'm aware, I believe staff is aware as well.
Okay. Not the greatest welcome to our visitors or any visit to the island. Secondly, you've been here longer than 2 years, have you not?
Yes, sir.
You didn't come here when the island was wild. The cougar has made it wild. It's only been here for a couple of years, but anyway, I hear what you're saying. Any steps forward that would help us get to as far as I'm concerned, a successful resolution, which is to ensure that this island does not become a multiple cougar island. That is a deep concern of mine. I mean, these cougars get here in their swimmingly log room ways, and if another one arrives here before people find out about it, and it's of the opposite sex, we're going to have a much bigger problem to deal with. So it's too small and of an island and too highly populated, I think, to be introducing at this stage of all of our lives an apex predator. But at any rate, I've said my piece, and I thank you for the time, and I hope that we can.
I wonder if I might take a second of Mr. Russell's time to ask a question.
No,
What is
Mr.
the
Williams,
definition?
no. Unfortunately not, Mr. Williams. So we're in a delegation portion of the meeting, so we're not entertaining comments from the gallery at this point. If you have additional comments, you're free to write us or make public comments at the next regular council meeting. Thank you for being here today, Mr. Russell.
Thank you.
I just add one thing about somebody to research the wolf dog and that incident. You don't want the same thing to happen and let everybody know.
Yes, I think we could probably take that up with staff.
Environmentals.
Okay, I'm just going to return to the agenda here. Moving on, council to the consent agenda. I look to councilors for items that they wish to pull from the consent agenda. Starting with Eddie, your hand up.
4.3, 12.4, 12.8, and 12.7.
Sorry, you'll have to slow that down. 4.3,
12.4,
12.4,
12.8,
12.8,
12.27.
Would you, Councilor Fast?
Thank you. I was interested in 12.4, but 12.10, please.
10. The other councilors wishing to
I
pull?
was going to call 4.3, but that's. And I was originally going to pull all the correspondence to do with the.
Okay.
But given the discussion, we had an opportunity to have some sort of a more formed meeting with.
The powers that be.
Powers that be.
Yeah.
And I will not. Not happy with my way of life being totally disrupted.
Yes, Councilor.
4.4, just very brief.
Okay, so we'll run through these in numerical order, but first I'll look for a motion to adopt the consent agenda. Moved by Councilor Getty, seconded by Councilor Wake. Any further discussion? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
That carries unanimously. Now on to items pulled from the consent agenda. 4.3, the committee establishment and repeal and amendment bylaws. Over to you for disposition, Councilor Getty.
Early on in the discussions about the setting up of the joint management committee for this building, there was, you brought it to my attention that there was a few things that were in the recreation commission bylaw that weren't covered in terms of other buildings, other programs and things like that, different. And I'm thinking that that still hasn't been covered in any kind of policy or recommendation. I would like to pull 689 cited as put on Parks and Recreation Commission Establishment Bylaw and the repeal of that from this list. And having a further look in terms of whether or not few of those sections need to be put into some other policy.
Okay, I see our deputy corporate officer up here at the front. Maybe if you wanted to speak sort of to the intention or reasoning behind this item in the consent agenda, then we can look at severing those three recommendations should it be desired.
Okay, so the Parks and Recreation Establishment bylaw was specific to the committee, which has been dissolved by council. I'm just madly looking for that terms of reference or the bylaw to see what elements.
Section 7, responsibilities and duties.
Okay, so I'm wondering if we would be able to repeal this, but then take a look at those principles and apply them to another guiding document. Does that make sense?
The horse before the cart or what? It seems to me that it's fair that it's something that needs to be looked at before the appeal.
So for the sake of time then, if nobody has the terms of reference of the former commission in front of them, I might suggest that because this item's pulled, we can sever the three resolutions there and simply postpone the first one, should it be desired to have more conversations.
I move to seven.
Okay, any opposition severing? Not seeing any, so we'll deal with all of those recommendations separately. To give you some leeway, I'm just gonna push us through here as quickly as possible. So the first one is the bylaw number 689, 2025, cited as Bowen Island Parks and Recreation Commission Establishment Bylaw, number 346, 213 repeal bylaw, number 689, be read a first, second, and third time.
I move to defer.
Okay, move to postpone by Council Morse. Seconded by Council Getty. Not seeing any further discussion, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Aye. The two remaining resolutions, the bylaw number 690, 2025, cited as Bowen Island Municipality Cove Bay Water System Local Service Area Establishment Bylaw as read in the agenda, as well as that bylaw number 691, 2025, cited as Bowen Island Municipality Snug Cove Local Service Area Establishment Bylaw number 10, 2000, cited in the agenda. I have a mover for those. It's moved by Councilor Fast, seconded by Councilor Getty. Any further discussion? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
And that carries unanimously. And to 4.4, development procedures for Indigenous governing bodies, bylaw number 699. Over to you, Councilor Getty, for definition.
Okay, thank you. Section 5.1 talks about adding 30 to 60 days. Sure if I can pull it up. For referrals and sorry, in the amendment that is proposed and attached to our agenda. 2.2, it talks about adding 5.10 and renumbering the subsequent sections. Despite 5.8, referrals to Indigenous governance bodies must be given a minimum of 60 to 90 days from the date of referral, providing comments. And I'm wondering if we want to add, and one of the things that we found with Islands Trust in our referrals is that there might be capacity issues, there might be requests for funding, and that I'm not sure if 60 to 90 as a minimum is going to be adequate, and whether we should add such other times as requested and deemed appropriate. So that there's we can walk through the process in terms of what kinds of question points are making what we have to deal with, so that it's not a clear and solid expectation of the time limit right here. There are often not enough.
Perhaps I'll refer that question. I noticed that our planner joined the staff table up here at the front. Perhaps you'd like to walk us through the reasoning for the changes and the 60 to 90 day window.
Through the chair, the 60 to 90 day window was the time period suggested by staff at Squamish Nation. We're perfectly fine adding more time if council wishes and thinks it might need additional staff capacity, but that was what staff at Squamish Nation suggested to us.
Okay. Back to you, Councilor Gibb.
In that case, all is. Sorry,
Move the motion.
all right, I'll move the motion that, the recommendation from staff that's in the agenda for 4.4.
That bylaw number 699 cited as Bowen Island Municipality Development Procedure bylaw number 494, be read as second and third time. Moved by Councilor Getty, seconded by Councilor Morse. Further discussion? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
You're now unmuted.
That carries unanimously. Moving down to 12.4 and information items. We have Stuart Poll regarding unannounced disruptions to Bowen Island commuter ferry run on September 7th. Back over to you, Councilor Getty.
So in Mr. Cole's second letter, he recommends three things, and we don't have a transportation committee anymore. There's a whole lot of things that we're doing with BC Ferries. It doesn't relate to the recommendations that he's making in terms of filming and contacting the community. But I want to keep track of that. If we're creating a list in terms of the kinds of things that we can work through with BC Ferries in terms of procedures and process. I don't want to lose track of this. I think he said this a really good comment. It's something that we need to follow up. So it's keeping track of the number of cars on an overload and requiring that they contact the municipality, and I can't remember what the third one was.
BC Ferries track, overload data, community outreach in their planning. And
So,
BC Ferries.
I'm not sure if you sort of have a transportation committee, I'd be asking that you refer to them, but I'm not sure who to refer to. I want it to be somehow or other kept track of.
By Council Pass.
Thank you. Thank you for pulling this. I agree. I thought it was a good series of letters, because there's another one underneath his. The second link there refers to his original report to BC Ferries. And I appreciated how he documented that BC Ferries does not record vehicles left behind on the Bowen side. And I think we should be asking for accurate and complete information. If we could ask BC Ferries to collect accurate and complete information so that they can, for example, estimate impact of permits that they make, as in the recent filming one. Because the measuring or the impact or estimating the impact needs accurate and complete information, including on the Bowen side. And I've seen, over the years, I've seen several reports from transportation consultants and management, traffic management firms, and they use the information that's available. So they never, or sorry, I'm thinking of one particular incident, I shouldn't say never, but in this one particular incident, the impact was half because they only looked at the overloads on the Horseshoe Bay side, because that's all the data that they had. So I want to, my suggestion was to refer 12.4 to staff regarding whatever we decide in 6.1, which is the what we're going to do next about BC Ferries advocacy to them, and that it's that we ask that staff review include, and I'll be bringing these things up again. I just wanted to flag that letter. So I'd like to refer 6.1 to staff.
So it sounds like
Sorry, to 12.4.
So we are on the item now, so it could be refer to staff for consideration in future ferry advocacy and policy making.
Yeah, thank you. I move that.
Moved by Councilor Fast, seconded by Councilor Getty. Make sure our corporate officers have time to catch up. Any further discussion? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
You're now unmuted.
And that carries unanimously. Moving on to 12.8. Kathy Peters regarding 3 asks to stop child sex trafficking in British Columbia, dated September 15th, 2025.
Right, so Kathy Davis used to live on Bowen, and she's written a couple of posts, and she's spoken before with to the Rotary Club. Is speaking with them again tonight about this, and she's been very active at EVCM conferences, and I'm not sure that her letter had gone to I guess it would be the public safety and police, and she says that she's worked closely with police and municipalities. And I would think that it might also be of interest if we could refer this to the school. And the example that I keep thinking of is Maxwell handing out her business cards and asking girls that she just stops in the middle of the road thinking that they're pretty and asking them if they ever wanted to be a model. That is what brings kids in so easily, and it's education. It really is taking candy from a stranger. So, just a recommendation that we forward this to the school and the police.
Okay, moved by Councilor Getty, and not seeing a seconder, so the motion doesn't come to the floor, so perhaps then just a motion to receive.
Audio now on me. I will second.
All right, I'll move to receive. Councilor Jurgensen seconds. Any further discussion? Not seeing anyone, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any
Audio
opposed?
now unmuted.
And that carries unanimously. 12.10 over to you, Councilor Fast, Dennis Vedder regarding alert dated September 16th, 2025.
Thank you. Yeah, this is just good info, I think, for the Emergency Program Executive Committee. So I was going to refer to his letter to the Emergency Program Executive Committee for information.
Okay, moved by Councilor Fast, seconded by Councilor Wake. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. Question, all in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
And that carries unanimously. And last item, 12.27. John Schaefer regarding understanding disaster preparedness in Vancouver, dated October 6th. Over to you, Councilor James.
Now, this has been forwarded to Chris Taylor, Bowen, ESS, and Ed Walkman. And I wasn't familiar with the name of but you just referred to the letter to the emergency program.
Emergency Program Executive Committee.
If this could be forwarded to them as well. Probably same number of members, but an overlap, and it would be good. It's lengthy, but it's really good, and I think that it's really helpful information for all of us to take into consideration. So I'm just highlighting it, making sure it gets to whoever looks at these things.
So, just a move to refer to the Emergency Program Executive Committee.
Yes, please.
Okay.
For information.
For information, moved by Councilor Getty, seconded by Councilor Wake. Any further discussion? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Audio
now on mute.
And that carries unanimously. Okay, moving on to section 6, business arising from minutes. 6.1, consideration of motion. Myself. Notice was given at September 8th, 2025 regular council meeting. Read the motion into the record. Whereas BC Ferries operations in Snug Cove cause daily congestion, traffic hazards, and parking pressure in the heart of Bowen Island's small town center, placing strain on municipal roads, infrastructure, and public spaces. And whereas ferry traffic moves through a busy pedestrian area and school zone along a single narrow roadway, creating a growing public safety risk with the potential for serious accidents, injury, or loss of life, the municipality has a statutory duty to address. And whereas BC Ferries contributes no substantial regular annual funding towards municipal costs of traffic management, parking enforcement, public safety measures, or infrastructure maintenance and renewal arising from its operations. And whereas addressing these impacts, including roadway upkeep, parking management, safety infrastructure, and staffing, is likely to require sustained annual expenditures into the hundreds of thousands of dollars with additional municipal staff needed in the absence of any BC Ferries presence on the island. And whereas the municipality has a clear jurisdiction over its roads, parking and land use, and the ability to levy fees and regulate business activities without infringing on BC Ferries marine operations. And whereas roadways and parking areas used by ferry passengers in Snug Cove are wholly municipal, creating opportunities for cost recovery through measures such as parking fees for non-residents, business licensing, and roadway use charges. Therefore, be it resolved that Council directs staff to bring forward a comprehensive review of all available regulatory, cost recovery, enforcement, and public safety tools the municipality can apply to BC Ferries land-based operations and associated vehicle traffic in Snug Cove, including but not limited to 1, business licensing and conditions for land-based ferry-related operations; 2, roadway use permits and associated fees; 3, parking fees, including differential rates for non-residents; 4, traffic and roadway restrictions to improve safety and flow; 5, changes of land use or acquisition of new land in the Snug Cove area; 6, any other legally permissible measures, including potential legal remedies, to recover municipal costs, mitigate operational impacts, and address liability, damages, or injury risk arising from BC Ferries operations. And that the staff review include A, a collection and analysis of existing relevant data on traffic volumes, parking utilization, pedestrian movement, and incidents or collisions in Snug Cove, including in the school zone. B, identification of any measures requiring coordination with or approval from the province of British Columbia, along with the recommendation advocacy strategy. 3, legal, financial, and operational implications for each measure, and that this initiative be incorporated into the municipality's 2026 strategic plan update as a council priority project with the objective of having a comprehensive operational solution in place and active by May 2026. Seconded by Tim, or Councillor Wake. Apologies. All right. So it's been moved and seconded. I will open with a motivation on the motion and then open it for discussion. I believe that what we've seen in Snug Cove, particularly this last summer, when we had more visitors to the island, when ferry operations were more overwhelmed, including everything from altercations in the ferry line to folks at busy times parking in the lane of travel and disrupting traffic, that this is creating an increasing public safety concern. And the good faith advocacy that we've sought to do with BC Ferries, which has included, meeting with their leadership team, having their leadership team come out here, letters that we have sent them on behalf of council that have gotten no response, work that the CAO and I have done in getting the ferry marshal program up and running and trying to work with BC Ferries on that, and being obstructed at certain periods of time necessitates a stronger response from the municipality if BC Ferries is not going to take responsibility for their Snug Cove operations. This isn't what we see in other small communities where BC Ferries has its own land. They have their own marshalling area, they have their own staff, and there seems to be what feels like an outright refusal to provide that to Bowen Island. And the reality is, based on BC Ferries' own numbers, is that our route, when you take away the big boats and you just leave all the minor routes in the system, our route is the most trafficked minor route in the system. We move over 1.3 million passengers a year across that ferry route from Horseshoe Bay to Snug Cove. And not having a BC Ferry staff presence and infrastructure presence on this side of the island is making it a de facto municipal responsibility to solve. And the only way to solve that is on the back of property taxes. We need to find ways where we can recover costs from BC Ferries in the absence of them coming to the partner or coming to the table as a full partner, as well in this quagmire of governance that sees BC Ferries pointing the finger at the provincial government saying, it's not our problem. The ferry authority not really knowing what their jurisdiction is or how they're going to take over the public interest of the ferry system. So it feels like we're here on our own. And the only way to do this is through strong action on the municipality, and probably in creative ways that have never been contemplated before across any other ferry dependent community. That'll open the floor for discussion. Councillor Fast.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing this motion. I think this is important to do, especially after the summer that we've just seen and the meeting that you convened with the mayor of Gibson's, I guess, but I was sad I wasn't able to go there, and I'm glad you got such a good turnout at the day before the Union of BC Municipalities met. That's a good sign. Anyway, I just had one suggestion, a couple of suggestions. Down in the and that staff review include in A, where it says pedestrian movement, if we could insert the words something like and other non-vehicle traffic participants, including, for example, cyclists or micro transportation, like little electric skateboards and unicycles and all the other things that people are using. I'm not sure if they're called unicycle when you don't cycle when they're electric. And so the wording would be pedestrian and other non-vehicle traffic participants, such as cyclists, micro transportation.
Another non-vehicle
Traffic participants?
participants or users?
Well, I think they're participating in the use of roads. They're not. Sorry?
You're the chair. You've used the word movement in the motion.
Oh, right. Micro transportation movement. Thank you.
So pedestrian and other non-vehicle movement.
Yeah. Okay.
Or micro.
Well, then it doesn't get cyclists. I just.
Well, I'll look at council for the language of it. So currently there's no proposed amendment, seconded, that inserts after pedestrian and other non-vehicle traffic.
Okay,
Does that sound like it captures it?
I'm fine with that. Yes, that's my motion.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Discussion on the amendment. Not seeing any. I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
That carries unanimously. So back to the discussion on the new motion. Yes, to staff for comment.
Thank you, Chair. Point of clarification, with respect to the last portion of the planned resolution, and that staff review include, and we've listed a collection analysis of existing relevant data. The means of doing that are currently not in place. We may need to get a budget authorization in order to have those in place. They may include types of traffic control, traffic counting devices. So a suggestion might be to say a plan for the collection and analysis of the existing relevant data. Is that the intent there? Or we currently do not have the data, and a recent request for BC Ferries to provide it to us resulted in their refusal to give us any data of any kind that would align with this. So I just want clarification. Are we to come back with a plan on how we're going to collect and analyze this data? Or is there an expectation that we have this data now and we are going to analyze it, provide some insights to council?
Right. Yeah, so that's a fair comment, and part of the intent of wording it as collection and analysis of existing relevant data is just to know what's out there. So I know that staff has been working, that we did file a freedom of information request with BC Ferries to get more granular data, which was very recently sent back to us, sort of refusing the provision of traffic data, which is frustrating certainly. But I think just this initial review is looking at what we can do based on the existing data. If we need to, if there's a plan to collect more data, I think there's a presentation to council that could be made as to this is what we have, this is what we don't have, this is what we would need to implement anything. And then that would be part of a budget process. So the intent isn't to go out and collect a whole bunch of new data that we don't have and would require various technological and human solutions to capture that data. It's just an assessment of what do we have now in hopes of illuminating what will be needed in the future.
that clarifies things. Yeah, for example, on incidents or collisions in Snug Cove, that data is already captured by ICBC and staff have access to that data.
Great.
So that's an easy one, but the other ones would require some form of traffic counting devices. So that clarification works.
Right. Right, and the intent again, is that's gonna be a cost that's incurred by the municipality that really shouldn't be borne by us. Right, like that type of that data analysis and that data capture, would be in a regular ferry terminal that was owned by BC Ferries, their responsibility to fund and collect, right? Like we don't do that, we don't collect that data for TransLink. Why are we doing that for BC Ferries? And as a result, we can take that on, but we need a way to recover the cost for that. That's fast.
On the same point about existing relevant data, there is a source of data that I just wanted to make sure staff was aware of, and that's Crippen Regional Park has traffic counters for pedestrians at the causeway where it hits the traffic circle. And I may have one at the festival field, at the top of the festival field. So I know in previous years, many years ago, there was construction work started on the causeway, and kind of a big hole was left. And all the morning commuters coming down in the dark, and the school kids and everybody encountered this hazard. And it became clear that that traffic counter has flows of pedestrians. That's a source of information that, it's estimates, but still that you could reach out to regional park staff, see if they've got that info.
Councilor Morse, or sorry, Councilor Getty, followed by Councilor Morse.
So the last point is that the initiative be incorporated into the strategic planning. So I'm wondering when our next strategic planning session is scheduled for, and if you're asking that the plan be somehow or other mapped out in some way in terms of either bare bones or fully fleshed out for that, and what the timeline on that is.
So we do have our strategic plan, so a couple of answers there. The intent of explicitly spelling out to council that this should be a strategic priority and putting it here in advance of our strategic planning discussion is one, to get it on the agenda to signal to staff that yes, this is a high priority council objective. The second is that if we're looking for solutions to be in place for May, then we need to give as much lead time as possible. So part of this motion would look at business licensing, for example. So if we want to make changes to our business licenses for 2026, staff need to have that direction in their hand as soon as possible to begin researching it and seeing what that might look like, just as an example. But the idea is that this has been an ongoing and increasing concern. I think over the last few years, we've done our best. I mean, the fact that we took on a pilot project to provide our own ferry marshals. So I cannot think of another community in the province that funds their own ferry marshals. Like the fact that exists is, to me, right out there. And it became clear, I think we had the speaker earlier who was talking about it, how, the one marshal, we did have two on it at some cases, wasn't enough. And so we went from a place of last summer where we had an on-demand marshaling program that I think we spent $6,000 on a year that would be, was responsive, reactive. So once it got a complaint, we would deploy a flag out there. This year, we moved to a proactive system where we had municipal employees that were on shift that would do that, but it wasn't enough. In the summer, we saw that on a long weekend, we had a marshal or two that was out there, and they were completely overwhelmed with people parking in the line of traffic up by the school in the roundabout, and it's simply not enough. Yes, Councilor Daly.
For the record, I'm fully in favor of this notice of motion, and it's been raised at the trust, and it's been raised, in terms of trying to figure out how the sponsors get together, and you know, a whole bunch of other things. It was front and center for years on the transportation committee. So it's, you know, it's good to put this all, pull it all together. My question was, what's the timing in terms of our strategic planning? And are we expecting the staff to work on this prior to that session? I mean, I can't remember what's in the strategic plan in terms of, I think this is a priority, if not, it should be, and it probably will be, but you know, what are we looking at time? In the last year of our.
Yeah, through the chair, so we've kind of fleshed out the agenda for that October 24th meeting. This very topic is one of, I think we devoted about 45 minutes-ish to to this conversation. The mayor and I were gonna try and set up a little mini agenda for that portion of strategic planning, just back-to-back meetings today, a big agenda. We didn't get to it, but we're hoping to have that finalized and have a discussion as strategic planning, which will result in specific items being added to the 2026 update, which will be the last update before the end of this council term. So that's where we're at, is we're trying to get that in there. And part of the reason why I wanted it to be on the strategic plan is to give staff as much time as possible to look into these matters and get things in place, because we're being asked to have aspects in place by me.
Supplementary, if I may, is that enough time for a budget allocation if we need it? Anything changes?
Well, that will still be in the very early stages of budget development, so it should be plenty of time, and we can always make amendments during the process if we have any information.
Councilor Morris, followed by Councilor West.
Well, that was more or less my question. Reading paragraph C, it sounds like we are directing that this be part of the 2026 strategic plan.
Yeah.
Whereas rather than discussing it at the strategic planning session. So this motion saying, okay, this is going to be one of the steps in the strategic plan, regardless of what we talk about on the 24th of October.
Yes.
And my other question was how much staff time is going to be needed to do this? And my third comment is BC Berries used to come and offer to do things in the way of funding and creating fairy marshalling areas, but the community never accepted any of their ideas for fairy marshalling areas. And we don't own any land anymore that can be used for fairy marshalling areas. It means buying land from Metro. So, and the community didn't want to even consider Berries offering, asking that for filing. So I could bring you a Tyler, things like that. To say that this has been discussed. And I did deliver the missing plans to Dan the other day. So I'm not happy with passing this as now, but means we've incorporated it into the plan without discussing it at strategic planning day, because there's some things in here, but these don't think that they're very easy to administer.
Thank you. With regards to how can staff collect the info? I'm sure they thought about it, but the transportation plan has a big fat appendix of all the information that went into the transportation plan from 6 years ago or something like that. So maybe those sources are all there, whatever can be updated could be. And same with the active transportation plan. There's a lot of data that staff have already collected and described. So maybe that would be obviously the Head Start place that I would start, but just to make other councillors aware of that resource.
I believe there was a question directed to staff.
Sure.
Councillor.
Yep.
Allison's question there, in terms of staff time. An open-ended question. I can't gauge what that would take. I know a tremendous amount of staff time has been spent on libraries. I think we put in probably about 20 hours of work towards a very independent community event alone. So if the mayor wants to correct me on this understanding, I'll defer to them after, but my understanding of this resolution is it's basically broad guidance to staff to prioritize actions around ferry that at the strategic planning session, we're going to get an additional level of granularity on what it is we're doing and which one of those actions we're going to prioritize above others. Are we, going to be focusing on big legislative changes that require coordination with MLA, the province, and BC Ferries? I mean, that's got a more uncertain timeline, or are we going to focus maybe on quick wins right now? So I know staff are going to be bringing forward a budget proposal to extend the ferry queuing lanes further back. I think there's room to do that within our right of way. If we bury the drainage, the ditches there and underground them, we could maybe fit in 10 to 20 more spots there. So there are going to be concrete things that are coming forward that are implementable. So I think my hope is that in strategic planning, we get into a further level of granularity and prioritization of which actions we're going to pursue.
Well, I just make a motion to refer 6.1 to the strategic planning.
Moved by Council Morse. Not seeing a seconder, so the motion doesn't come to the floor. We are back to the main motion. I'm not seeing any further discussion. I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
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 Audio now.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries with Councillor Morse in opposition. Moving on to 7.1, their bylaws, 1355 West Side Road rezoning. We have Danny from the Unit of Community Development joining us here today.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Council. So I'm here today to introduce an application to amend the official community plan designation and land use bylaw zoning for 1355 West Side Road. So it's located on West Side Road, on the west side of the island, sort of almost bordering Laura Road and north of Adams Road. Just in terms of process timeline for council, this is our typical timeline for rezonings and OCP amendments, just to highlight that this is the introduction to council and seeking the referral to committees. It's the next step in the process. In terms of our official community plan, the site is designated RS, rural residential. The staff report has more of the policies and objectives for this designation, but I've just highlighted two here. So policy 138 and 140 about low building density is encouraged. Policy 140, an average parcel size of 1 hectare. So we know in the report that the OCP amendment is required for this development application. The report also goes into some of the housing specific policies in our OCP that may be relevant for this application. So it's like the objective 152 is to provide for a range of housing types and tenures on Bowen Island. Policy 358 then goes specific into housing types that are supported within Sunclo Village and outside. And then policy 367 is talking about the majority of affordable and special needs housing should be located within Sunclo Village. Other locations should be easily accessible to public transit. Going into the zoning for the property, this property is zoned rural residential 3. So this is one of our sort of typical rural zones. It allows the dwelling, agriculture, stable use. It allows accessory uses like accessory residential use, which is secondary suite or detached secondary suite. It allows residential guest accommodations or short-term rentals. It allows mini storage. Has a maximum lot coverage of 1,500 square meters. And I'll just note I've zoomed in the map here, maybe too close, but if you zoom out, basically the properties on West Side Road on both sides are all in this R3 zone. So the proposed development that's before you is to amend the zoning and the OCP to permit the development of 34 modular homes on the western side of the property. So shown here is the proposed site plan, showing their locations and the existing buildings and structures on the property. So the applicant intends for these to be rented home sites where tenants would construct their homes on the property and pay a monthly fee for the land to the applicant. The applicant would act as the developer to create the needed infrastructure on the property, internal roads, the water, septic servicing, common amenities, etc. And the intent is for the homes to be modest in size, so suggested 1 and 2 bedroom units with a maximum floor area established in the zoning. I'm going to go through some of the staff discussion in the report. I know that this is a lengthy agenda, but I was just going into some more detail than I typically do, so that's okay. So water, the applicant is proposing to service the development through groundwater on the site. And included in the application is a letter from the water consultants for their engagement. And so staff note through the application process, staff would recommend council require the applicant demonstrate sufficient water as required in our land use bylaw for subdivisions. And so we'd say that would be our standard for requiring it through this rezoning process to demonstrate suitable water. I don't have that section in front of me, but it talks about that a registered professional can attest that there's sufficient water to service the proposed units with set numbers, and that as part of their review, they're reviewing that essentially the use of that water isn't drawing down neighboring wells or leaks. In terms of septic, the proposal plans to service wastewater with on-site septic. So as with every application, we refer the plans to Vancouver Coastal Health for advice on the proposal. And they noted that the peak flows on the site exceed the limits in the sewerage system regulation. So that the proposal proposes 2 parallel septic fields for on-site septic systems, and the total flows exceed the amount. And so there's new guidance from the province on what to do in these situations. And so Coastal Health has referred this to the Ministry of Environment as it may be regulated under the municipal wastewater regulation instead of the sewerage system regulation. And so we will continue to be updated in any response and will update council. Talking to some of our municipal policies, we have a conservation development policy. It's outlined in the report. But the initial steps in the policy, we have to provide an environmental report, analyzing existing natural features and environmentally sensitive areas present on the proposed development site. So the report goes into those details. Primarily, it's the creek on the west side of the property, a small area of creek on the east side, and a small wetland on the east side, which would be about 20% of the overall site. So at a minimum, staff would recommend these be protected by restrictive covenants as a condition of the rezoning. Council is aware that this policy seeks a minimum of a goal of 50% of the property be protected. But it talks about as well sort of imbalance with other council priorities. And so the applicant is pointing to the provision of the housing on the property instead of reaching that 50% protected area. And the affordable housing policy speaks to 15% of the proposed development be affordable, and the definition of that being that it's governed by a housing agreement held by the municipality. The applicant is supportive of entering into a housing agreement. And so staff recommend proceeding by referring this application to Birch for recommendation on the affordability of the proposed development. And then trails. So the applicant proposes dedicated trail across the property to connect with a proposed trail on lot 7. So the status of that proposed trail on 7 obviously is in flux. There's an active application that also proposes a trail connection, but hasn't advanced to bylaw reading at this point. So staff, the map here is showing from our OCP trail map. So I say staff support the trail connection. Some of the goals that we would have for it is that it avoids sensitive areas on the property. It respects neighbors' privacy. And then I say here supports trail connection as the like sort of a point-to-point connection as opposed to extensive internal trails that municipality would manage. And so staff recommend referral to 3 committees and then to Birch, our partner. Some of them for recommendations for the OCP steering committee for information on the proposed amendment to the OCP as moves forward. Our development procedure bylaw would call for a public information meeting following first reading from council, and we would recommend that take place. And then finally, put forward alternative here. So this application would seek an amendment to the official community plan to permit the proposed development. Council, as you know, has initiated a multi-year project to review Bones, to update Bones OCP. anticipated completion spring or summer of 2026. So in light of this, our council may wish to defer consideration of individual OCP amendments until a new OCP has been established. And I have a proposed motion there, council wishes to move that alternative. But following that, direct staff recommendations, council refer the application to the Advisory Planning Commission, the Parks, Environment, Climate Action Advisory Committee, to the Bowen Island Resilient Community Housing Birch, and the official community plan steering committee, and to report back with results of the referrals. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Martin. So we'll open the discussion with the sort of front loading, giving the weight of our agenda today, or the density of our agenda today, that the recommendation here is just a recommendation to refer to committee. So we're not in a large detailed discussion about the merits of the project. It's just to refer to committees. Councillor Fast.
Thank you. A question for staff is in the excerpts from the OCP, I didn't see a reference to the donor lands and density increase eligible lands. And I believe, and there is a schedule in the OCP that refers to donor lands that provide density that could be moved into the into Snug Cove exactly for these kinds of reasons. Can you comment on why that, I guess, that schedule C2, the donor lands, is never, we don't consider it very much? Or why isn't it referred to here? I thought it was a donor land.
Through the chair to Councillor Fast. Yeah, I could have referred, I think it would again be an item that would have to be amended to the application, similar to other developments on Bowen. We've amended that map to allow specific development, the Arbutus Ridge development, for example.
Okay, thank you.
I had a whole number of questions, but I'm happy with the recommendation, except I'm wondering if we need the word society after Bowen Island Resilient Community Housing Society. And the other is that we would have a council site visit so that when we got the results of the referrals back, we've all been out there and had a look at the site. So I'm happy to make a motion and clause requesting a site visit. So I'll move the council refer application OCP/RZ-2025-0013 to the Advisory Planning Commission, Parks, Environment, and Climate Action Advisory Committee, the Bowen Island Resilient Community Housing Society, and the official Community Plan Steering Committee, and that council, a site visit for council be arranged prior to receiving the results of the referrals, and the council direct staff to report back with the results of the referral. Thorough-wise referral.
Moved by Councillor Morse.
Before it gets seconded.
Sure.
Good staff, I would find it helpful, the comments in figure 4 that have to do with the existing conditions from Madison Consultants, and they're talking about potential wet boundary or possibly the environmental report. If that somehow could be overlaid with figure 3 in the I don't have a sense of this southeast corner where there's apparently a potential wet spot, that where that is on this map in terms of the outline of the proposal. It might be outside the where the containers are. It might be in this. I'm not sure. I'll find that helpful.
Just going to go back to, because I'm not sure if that's germane to the motion to refer.
It's an amendment to this report.
It's an amendment to the report. Okay, proceed then.
So then I would be asking staff to add to the report some sort of an overlay in terms of that the different levels of information.
Okay, so perhaps let's get the motion seconded, because I think there's discussion about what we'd like to see included when it goes to committees.
Before it's seconded, just a typo, I think Councillor Morse said 0013, it's 0113, just to make sure.
I thought I read out what was up there.
All this, I would like to hear our corporate officer to confirm.
I mean, reading exactly for.
We have 011.
So it's been moved by Councillor Morse. Seconded by Councillor Wake, and now we can discuss the content of the referrals. I'm going to go back to Councillor Getty first, just to make sure that her concerns were adequately addressed, and I'll go to you, Councillor Wake.
Planner nodded, yes.
Okay. Yes.
Good enough.
Over to you, Councillor.
I'll be brief here. We're just, going out to referral at this point, but I have to point out, I mean, conceptually, this sounds like a great idea. But there's a lot of caveats here, and, we've got policy 138, 141, 143, 258, 363, 367. We've got requirements under water and septic that need to have some resolution. There's our conservation development policy and our affordable housing policy. So I'm just cautioning, there's a lot of work to be done before this makes it through the other end.
Councillor Past.
I won't be voting in favor of this motion from what I've heard and read so far, unless I can be persuaded. I think it's too early, and if this motion fails, I'll be moving that the alternative, that we don't do it until the OCP process is complete, has happened, because I'm concerned about the loss of rural character and the loss of places where agricultural and growing food or having animals and those kinds of rural uses that are down there for this OCP designation. And I'm concerned about the WASP, the fish-bearing creeks and the wetlands and all of those setbacks, and the conservation development permit. They are not meeting the 50%, and I don't see the trade-off yet. And I just don't think we should be spending staff time on it and council time on it until the OCP has been updated with what the community sees for the future of the island and that part of the island. And I think that should be the first step before we start spending council and municipal staff resources, everybody's time and effort on this proposal, which maybe there's a better place for. So I won't be voting in favor of the motion as it is. I'll be advancing the alternative if it fails. Thank you.
That's fast.
In the interest of time, I didn't speak to my motion. But
You may take your time now, Councillor Morse.
I'm just looking at the map, and there's a huge area here that doesn't appear to have anything on it, so that might solve the 50% issue. There's also a community garden area, so that maybe solves the food. There's been a huge letters of support for the community wanting this, and all the magazines I pick up these days have raising affordable housing, modular homes, advantages and innovations of modular homes, and how to have multiple units. So it's a type of construction that's less expensive and I think would enable people to, I think it should be explored. So that's why I made the motion. And as far as the septic is concerned, I believe there's what I call little mini treatment plants. And we have to have one of those on our property. And they told us that we could drink the water that comes out the other end. If it floods over, and so what? So I think we should have happened.
Councillor Morse. So my comments are on the motion to refer, and perhaps this is a question for our manager of planning. I don't have any issues in voting to refer this, although just looking back at some of our it's distracting, but I love hearing kids.
Yeah.
It's great. so I know in the last, so the Advisory Planning Commission is dealing with a couple of these referrals. And I think a similar one, given its proximity to the recharge area, is the Adams Road rezoning that's going through that the APC just dealt with. And my recollection of that meeting is that they came to more questions than they had answers. So there's a bit of a non-recommendation, I think, coming back to council, but some great questions. So my encouragement with, if this is successful with the APC, is perhaps inviting the proponent to that meeting and having the APC be able to elucidate all of the questions and answers that they might have. I trust that group. They've got planners on that group. They've got community history on that group. And I would love to see them. I would love to spectate it back and forth because I don't know, I love municipal meetings for some torturous reason, where that committee has the opportunity to speak to the proponent and get all of the answers that they need that then can come back to council. I think that would be number one. I also don't have an issue with the referral to the official community plan steering committee. My only comments would be that I hope that it's not a duplication of effort that would be happening at the APC. I think a good use of that steering committee's time, and based on my witnessing of where they're at in the process, they are a boa constrictor that's trying to digest a cow right now. And to spend 90 minutes doing something that is already going to be done by the APC might not be a great exercise, but I wonder about, given that this proposal deals with things like affordable housing, deals with groundwater recharge quality and quantity, deals with density, deals with roads, that might be a good opportunity for the steering committee to use this as a model case that could be filtered through whatever's coming down the pipes for them, and not necessarily coming back with a yay or nay recommendation, because I don't want to politicize that committee when they're sort of focused on something else, right? But I think a proposal like this as a model proposal that could be filtered through some of the sustainability elements, some of the things that they're talking about, might be an interesting exercise for them, whether they have a recommendation that comes back to council or not. I think it's an interesting project in that respect. So I'm wondering if maybe you could speak to the difference that you would see in hosting those conversations between the APC and the OCP steering committee meeting.
Thank you. I think that's a great point. And that's like in the report I talked about for the OCP steering committee, we referred for information for that reason, that they're not sort of evaluating individual proposals, but that members of the committee have expressed wanting to make sure they're up to date on what is happening with development applications. What current applications do we have that would amend the OC? What's council's thinking on these? So from that point, for them to be informed of it, and you're right to see, okay, what are people proposing on the, what are sort of, what is possible? Versus, we always invite applicants to APC meetings, and sometimes they attend and sometimes they don't, but I think if this gets referred to the APC, would be encouraging the applicant to attend. And I know that in some cases, the APC has wanted site visits as well, and will likely be scheduling one with the Parks and Trails, which sort of leads to the potential of like 2 meetings with the committee. So they do an initial meeting, they do a site visit, they do a follow-up meeting to have a really good discussion and do the best possible recommendation for council.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think those would be 2 great places, both on the Parks and Environment Committee as well as the APC, given the discussions that I just watched in relation to the Adams Road one. It's highly encouraged the proponent to be present at those meetings, so that all of the questions can be answered in detail from the proponent, not having our planning department being kind of the middle person in trying to capture those. Councilor Fast.
I wonder if hearing the planner's suggestion that the OCP planning steering committee referral could be for information, whether those 2 words for information could go after OCP planning steering committee, like with a semicolon after housing, and then just to make it clear that it's not seen as a full referral, that it's for information, and the committee can obviously take it up if not. So I propose an amendment. I move an amendment to add a semicolon after the word housing, and to add the words for information after OCP steering committee.
Okay, seconded by Councillor Morse. Any further discussion on the amendments? Seeing any, all in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? What was that, in favor or in opposition, Councillor Jurgensen?
In favor.
In favor, okay, and that carries unanimously, so we're back up to the main motion. Any further discussion on the main motion, Councillor Getty?
So I have several pages of questions and summaries from reading through the application, and I'm wondering if it's going to these committees, whether or not those kinds of questions and issues should be raised at this point or after they've deliberated.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's always the will of council to determine what they want to do at any given point. My read of the process is that we're simply at a referral phase right now. Those referrals are going to come back to us, and I would expect a staff report to recommend one way or the other whether we proceed with an OCP amendment and rezoning. We're going to have some deep discussion at the council level at that point before we get to a first reading. I'm not sure if Councillor Getty, you wanted to forward your questions to those committees or hold them until the referrals come back and we've done a site visit.
Not sure either. I would like some of these concerns to be certainly be considered by the committees.
Could they just be referred to the manager of planning, so he has them?
Yeah, and we don't necessarily need a motion to do that. That would be up to individual councillor to forward them to the manager plan.
Okay. I'll drop a letter to David.
Seeing no further discussion, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, raise your hand, say nay.
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 Aye, in favor.
So that carries with Councillor Fast in opposition. Councillor Gill.
If I may comment in terms of all of one of the things that I'm not sure what adjective to use or adverb to use in terms of all the letters of support. There's quite a large number of repetitions, different dates, same people. And it would be very helpful when we move through 800 and 900 page agendas if the proponent could go through and eliminate the extras. So for instance, the proponents signed a letter of support on April the 2nd and on February the 5th.
That would be a good proponent, yeah. Moving on to 7.2, 1428 and 1430 Eagle Cliff Road rezoning. Number 693 and 694, again over to Manager County Development.
Changing scales. This is a rezoning and an application on Eagle. And this application has been before council before, but just as a reminder, it's to rezone the property to permit subdivision to create a third lot, one lot. With an overall average lot area of 0.67 hectares. So you see here the two current lots, 1420 and 1430 Eagle Cliff. And then the proposal would see this third lot created roughly taking half from one of the lots and half from the other lot. Where we are, so this has been introduced to council. Council's given first reading to the bylaws. They've been referred to the Islands Trust, and you have the response from them in the report. And so this is presenting the bylaws for second reading and referral to hearing. Bylaw 693 would create a new OCP policy 143, which would allow for a smaller average lot size for lots not served by a community water system. And then bylaw 694 would rezone the property to place into a new zone variation for the SR2 zone. Having that smaller average lot area for lots not on a community water system. It'd still be larger than we would allow for lots that are on a community water system. So the Islands Trust reviewed these two bylaws and they found both to be not contrary to or at variance with the Islands Trust policy statement. And then just amplifying the conditions on rezoning. So staff proposing the proponent is acceptable of, a covenant would be placed to prohibit development on at least 50% of the land across the future parcels, primarily along the eastern edge of the property, so the lower end around Bluff Creek, where it crosses the two properties. And then at the western edge of the property as it backs onto the crown level. And then following advice of the APC, that the covenant would also require compliance with the recommendations and conditions of the environmental assessment that was conducted on the property. And we would link approvals to compliance with those recommendations, so subdivision or building permits. And then to notice to neighbors, before we introduced this application to council, we gave notice to an expanded area of 300 meters, and so we would use that same notice again for a public hearing. Hence the recommendation being that these bylaws be read a second time and referred to a public hearing with an expanded notification radius of 300 meters.
Thank you. Council for questions or comments, Councilor Best.
Thank you. And I'm happy to see that the restoration plan and the monitoring that's described of the covenant that's proposed in the environmental plan by the consultant has been incorporated. So with that, I'm and the 50% and of the land designated as conservation, and the comments from Islands Trust is great. So I'm going to propose the motion. I'd like to read the motion. That bylaw number 693, cited as Bowen Island Municipality Official Community Plan, bylaw number 282, 2010, amendment bylaw number 693, 2005 be read a second time. That bylaw number 694, as described in the motion, be read a second time. And that bylaws number 693, 694 be referred to a public hearing with an expanded notification radius of 300 meters.
Moved by Councilor Best, seconded by Councilor Getty. Any further discussion? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Martin. Moving on to 7.3, 1360 Mount Gardner Road rezoning. We have Rebecca in our Island Community Planner joining us here today.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So the purpose of this report is to return to Council with the results of the referrals to the Islands Trust Executive Committee and to present the bylaw for second reading. So a basic summary of the application history is that after giving first reading to the rezoning and OCP amendment bylaws in April 2025, the bylaws were referred to the Islands Trust Executive Committee to assess whether the bylaws were contrary to or at variance with the Islands Trust policy statement. The Executive Committee at their June 4th meeting did find the bylaws to be contrary and responded that the bylaws may be reassessed after the municipality provided confirmation of an acceptable community amenity contribution and clarification of the tracking of undeveloped Cape Lodge Curtis densities. So staff returned to council on July 28th to propose a specific amount for cash in lieu of an amenity contribution, as well as providing a report tracking the Cape Lodge Curtis densities. Council accepted this and motioned for staff to refer the bylaws back to the Islands Trust Executive Committee and including the new information. So the Executive Committee reconsidered these bylaws at their September 3rd meeting. This time found bylaws 673 and 675, 2025 to be not contrary to or at variance with the Islands Trust policy statement. So council is now free to proceed with second reading. So that summarizes the history of the file. Not much new information to share other than that the public hearing stage will follow second reading since an OCP amendment is included in this application. And since a 100-meter radius would generally only reach a two-property radius, meaning basically the directly adjacent neighbors to the subject properties and the properties adjacent to them. So instead of a 300-meter radius is proposed by staff, and that will reach the majority of private properties in this residential area. And also note the super large properties on the east and west end of that map will also be notified as well, but that's just them ourselves and then the Crown. So staff recommend that council gives second reading to bylaws 673 and 675, 2025, and the council advises staff to prepare a public hearing with an expanded notification radius of 300 meters.
Thank you, Mr. Vatican. Council for questions, comments, disposition. So getting.
I'm prepared to go with the recommendation. Bylaw 673, site use Bowen Island Municipality Land Use Bylaw number 57, 2002, amendment bylaw number 673, 2025. Be read a second time, and the bylaw 675 also cited as in the motion, be read a second time, and that council advise staff to prepare public hearings with an expanded notification radius to 300 meters.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion on the motion? Councilor Giddy.
There's recommendation that the two public hearings may be heard at the same time. Do we need to include that in the motion?
Not at this time.
No, okay.
Council Fast.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that having heard from the Islands Trust and having seen the changes that have happened in the proposal so far, the community contribution, I'll be voting in favor of this for this next step so that it can go to the public hearing so we can hear from people around it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Fast. Not seeing any further discussion, I will call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, raise your hand, say nay.
Audio not muted.
And that carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Batkin. With Mr. Martin, 7.4, 561 and 564 Collins Road rezoning by law number 671 and 672. Over to our manager planning.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm here today with an application of 564 Collins Road to rezone in the MUOCP. And this is in a similar fashion, it's again to change the zoning to allow subdivision into two properties, this time around Collins Road. So this is presented for third reading. We held a public hearing on these bylaws on April 29th, 2025. And our time since then primarily has been in covenant drafting and just figuring out the exact wording of this restricted covenant. But so bylaw 671 would amend the OCP to designate it as RS rural residential instead of R1 rural, and bylaw 672 would amend the land use bylaw by placing the northern portion of the property into the SR1A zone to match the southern portion of the property. And this would allow subdivision of the property to match the neighboring properties. So the restrictive covenant is there in your agenda package. It would prohibit development on at least 50% of the land across the two future parcels, giving priority to protection of identified environmentally sensitive areas on the property, including the wetland on the northern portion. And it would provide for a trail easement to connect Collins Road to Crippen Park. And so staff are seeking approval to enter into this covenant prior to consideration of adoption of bylaws. And so the recommendation is to give third reading to these two bylaws, to authorize staff to enter into the proposed covenant, and then to refer the bylaw 671 to amend the OCP to the Islands Trust for approval. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Martin. I'll look to council for questions, comments. Councilor Fast.
First, just a question. I just want to be sure that there is no sketch of the covenant, right? Is there?
Correct. There's no sketch.
I just want to make sure I wasn't missing something. Because I saw it was described in the language of the, okay, great. Thank you. Otherwise, I'm in favor of this. And I'd be happy to move the motion.
I don't see any other councillors in queue, so feel free.
I move that Bowen Island, that bylaw number 671 cited as Bowen Island Municipality OCP bylaw number 282 be read a third time as described in the motion. That bylaw number 672 cited as Bowen Island Municipality land use bylaw number 57 ... as written be read a third time. That council authorized staff to enter into the proposed restrictive covenant on 561-564 Collins Road to provide the amenities associated with the rezoning application as written. The council refer bylaw number 671, 2024 to the Islands Trust for approval.
Moved by Councilor Fast. Seconded by Councilor Getty. Any further discussion? Comments, questions? Not seeing any. I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that carries unanimously. Going on for 2.5 hours right now. Maybe up to council whether you'd like to have a recess, a short recess.
Yeah. 5 minutes.
We'll take time. We'll come back at 3:30.
Audio now.
We're back.
We are back.
I believe we are at 7.5 building bylaw amendments. Over to Mr. Martin, our manager of planning development.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm here to present on proposed amendments to the building bylaw. I have a presentation that talks through the categories of amendments, and I was going to look to you for your desire how much time to spend on this.
Are you able to give me a range?
Like, do you want a 2-minute presentation or just to go straight to discussion?
Let's have a 2-minute presentation. I mean, we don't see the bylaw in front of us too often, so.
All right, so I have a series of proposed changes. I'll just go through them as they're numbered in the report. So first is to change how permits expire or are extended. So currently in the building bylaw, permits are issued for a term of up to 2 years, and they can be renewed for a maximum of 2 one-year extensions, so a 4-year possible length of a permit. And then the bylaw itself is kind of silent on what happens next. And so then somebody has to reapply for a new permit, and fees are based on the value of the remaining work. Challenges with this include determining what the value is of remaining work, determining what code version to use for the new permit, even tracking of schedules from registered professionals and home warranty and everything becomes quite a challenge. So what is proposed is to do like similar neighboring communities where we would just do continued extensions of a permit, but at an increased permit fee. So we're encouraging people to finish within the set time frame, but that we would continue doing extensions beyond that. I'll say too, permits expire if you discontinue work, and that would remain the same. So if somebody abandons their project, their permit would expire. It's somebody who needs to complete in the greater than 4 years. So, for example, this building took more than 4 years from building permit issuance, and if we had, it was issued under a previous bylaw that didn't have an expiry of permits, but if we had to redo a new permit and require consultants to consult with appropriate code of remaining work to updated code, it would have been quite a lengthy ordeal. Next change is that changes to the BC Energy Step Code. So our current bylaw has a graduated step with step code. We're up to step 3, which is what's in our bylaw, but our bylaw contains the previous iterations of the required step 1. So we would remove that out. We would include zero carbon step level 1, which is essentially when you have to report of carbon emitting things within your house. So it doesn't require changes, but just reporting. And finally, it would include a requirement for the energy advisor to be required throughout the complete part of a build. So what we sometimes see is people, the energy advisor will design the house based on certain specifications. It changes through construction. And essentially the contractor then puts it on the building official to determine if the like amended house now complies with the energy step code. So like the window brands may have changed or the door brands may have changed the appliances in the house. And it's quite challenging to remodel a house at that point. Our bylaw currently has 8 different areas where registered professionals are required. And we propose to include one that's for building envelopes where there complexity involved. So often this is about how the siding is layered or the waterproofing or whatever else it may be. Can get quite complex and technical, again, with energy requirements and water. Currently, our bylaw permits the building official to place stop work orders for things such as when you're not following the building code, when you're not following the bylaws or the home warranty. And we would add an explicit provision that we could issue stop work orders when work is not following the issued building. So some people say, well, it complies with code. I've just moved everything within the building. Say, okay, that's not what we issued a permit for. We haven't reviewed it. We don't know. Climatic data. So the BC Building Code provides generic climatic data across BC, but there's not Bowen specific data. But the building code does give jurisdictions ability to require their own specific data. And so this would establish that we would post climatic values on the website that are obtained through the federal government. And it would give the provision for owners to obtain specific data for their property. So this involves things like snow load for roof design. It includes things like maximum temperature of days, because the BC Building Code requires that you essentially have cooling rooms within a building, and how hot it gets in the property determines what you have to model to hit those targets. And so we have, through the federal government, we've acquired 4 or 6 data points, and we would establish regions throughout Bowen based on those. And we're requiring it through subdivisions for people to provide data for their subdivision, so that houses in that subdivision would meet those values. And this is actually a question we get quite often. People ask, what climatic data do we use for Bowen? And historically, we've always said use West Van, but there can be quite a range on Bowen compared to West Vancouver. Building official powers, the building official in our bylaw can order several things up to removal of a building that contravenes the Building Act. And we wanted to add authorization matching some other jurisdictions where have authorization to require an owner to submit a building permit for unauthorized work. That's typically our first step before we get to that removal of a building. We're saying we need to apply for a building permit for this building as well. There's a number of places where we're changing internal numbering where reference sections are no longer correct. This one we came to council before about swimming pool fencing. And so currently we require fencing around pool areas, but we don't allow you to fence to a house or a building. And so we had discussion with APC and then also discussion with MIABC, Municipal Insurance Adjusters of British Columbia, who provided the model bylaw. And some of their advice that they provided was the intent of the regulation the bylaw is modeled on is to block unauthorized pool use. So to that extent, they said there's no issue or liability concerns with fencing to a house. So we proposed that change where you would fence to a house, and that the house opening would have to be equipped with self-closing mechanisms like a gate. And one of the things the APC pointed out was that we require fencing on an outside pool, but an inside pool in a house, we have no fencing requirements. They said, okay, we're obviously not overly concerned with the house users themselves. We're concerned about unauthorized pool users. Occupancy permits, there's a list of requirements to be met for occupancy permits, including inspections, but currently our bylaw requires you need to follow the inspections in certain sections of the bylaw, but it doesn't actually capture necessarily all the inspections that we could require. And so this would just make it say you need to make inspections as per the bylaw. Currently, our bylaw requires that you need to pass an inspection before concealing work. So this is most common, like you need a framing inspection before you can drywall, at which point the building official can't actually see the framing. And we would include authorization that gives the building official power to say you need to remove the work before, so I can pass the inspection before you can proceed. And the last one, this was in that, this one is a later item that came in the bylaw on Friday, so it's not reflected in the report itself, but it's discussions with our fire chief. Our building bylaw has a provision that you need to provide fire access to a house. But currently the requirement in our bylaw is for a house to have a 6-meter wide fire access route, which is wider than many municipal roads. And this, through research into it, is a provision taken from requirements in the BC Building Code, but for Part 3, so complex buildings. And the BC Building Code does permit jurisdictions to impose their own requirements based on the fire department needs. So the proposal is to amend the fire access route to be 3.6 meters wide, which is the requirements for the fire department to access the property. And then I note with this too, that generally then that section 15 of our building bylaw that requires the 6-meter wide fire access, we haven't enforced because it's so large that it's almost doesn't seem realistic. But the note of this is to change this to 3.6 meters, and then staff will be enforcing the reduced requirement that actually matches our fire department needs, so ensuring that houses are accessible by the fire department. Okay, and so the recommendation is to give first reading to this bylaw. And I'll note I've received some comments from Councillor Morse about some corrections in the bylaw. So I think I would suggest rather than do it this meeting, that council is comfortable proceeding with first reading, then I would incorporate those as amendments at second reading stage. But I'm open to council's debate and discussion. Thank you.
Just fast.
Thank you for your report. This looks like good work to me that ends up with more safe and more practical ways to manage things. I'm wondering if my first question is it still going to be a maximum of 4 years before they have to apply for a new building permit?
Through the chart, no, so it would change. They would get it, still have the same 2-year time frame, and then after that, there'd be on 1-year extensions, and they would continue with extensions, multiple. There wouldn't be an expiry of that. They could continue, but because currently it's 20% of your building fee to extend, and then we would say that would be for the first 2, and after that, you'd be paying 50% of your building fee.
Right. So
to extend, which is quite a motivator.
That's the motivator. Okay, well, thank you. I just wasn't quite clear on that. Yes. And then, my question was about how we collect the climatic data, but thank you. Yeah, got it.
That's good.
I would ask that the notice to the public, include the headings from this, proposed bylaw. A lot of it's very technical, but I think, and the builders might be the only ones that are interested, but the swimming pool one, I think, has a broader application, and it'll just get lost and buried in terms of being technical. And, number 11, isn't included in your report, so if they're gonna refer to this, then I think you need to update your report.
Other comments, questions? Councilor Morse.
So what do we do? When are we gonna get the climatic data?
Through the chair, we have that now, we received it from the federal government. Yeah, we just don't have authorization to use that without it being in our bylaw.
Okay.
But the intent is, like I said, we obtained, I believe it's 4 data points. Essentially, it's like they'll do endless points, depending how much you want to pay for.
No, I was just concerned that we didn't have the data and the bylaw was gonna be passed and then people didn't have the data to refer to. So we've already got.
We
the
have
data.
that.
They want us to make sure. Okay, thank you.
Councilor Morse. Councilor Fast.
Just follow up about the climatic data. So this means somebody living in a special little microclimate where they feel that they want to get data just for that point. They could apply for to the federal government, get the data, bring that to the building department.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's great.
Since we're in the building bylaw, I'm curious, just from issues that have arisen in the past with 6.5 of the bylaw, which is in relation to right of entry by building inspectors. And, just for everyone's point of view, 6.5 states that subject to section 16 of the community charter, a building official may enter on property at any time to ascertain whether the requirements of this bylaw are being met. And I know that there's been disagreements in the past between residents and staff as to the interpretation of both the bylaw and how it ties to the community charter, as to what type of notice needs to be provided by the municipality before entering onto a private property. And I know that I don't know if it's the current regime, but the understanding that I had previously was that no, we don't need to give notice. We're not bound by the community charter. That's caused some frustration amongst residents. So I'm curious what the current interpretation is and whether it's worthwhile making some clear specifications in the building bylaw since we're in it to resolve some of those issues.
Sure. Yeah, so as you know, this reference to the community charter clearly means that notice is required before building officials or bylaw officials or whoever else enter properties. And then there's a whole separate thing about entering dwellings, which is much more restrictive maybe for municipal officers to enter a dwelling. So through like education with our staff and through some legal work, essentially the difference partly being if you have an active building permit or not. So without an active building permit, if like the building official observes that work is happening or has a report of work happening on a property and wishes to ascertain whether that's the case, that following this, that notice would have to be given, reasonable notice would have to be given of the coming inspection, and then you would have to follow the charter that's happening within business hours. We provided reasonable notice. Sometimes that's misinterpreted in terms of like permission versus notice.
Yeah.
So it is notice. The difference being the bylaw also provides authority for the building official to do periodic inspections of active building permits. And so we did develop some work, some flow charts in terms of how that looks. And so our legal interpretation was that like when you enter into a building permit and you signed and authorized the building permit, part of that is authorizing that periodic inspection of an active building site. Where that differs again is when it's a dwelling. So there's not permission for the building official to enter the dwelling to do a periodic inspection without providing notice. That if it's a dwelling that's inhabited and somebody's living there, it's a different thing than like a building site. Yeah, don't know if that answered the question.
It does somewhat. I would offer that I think some clearer language in the building bylaw might need to be considered, particularly under that right of entry heading that speaks to that notion that once the building permit's issued, then the building inspector is de facto permitted to enter property, because it's added, because the way that it's worded and the way that it traces back its reference to the community charter, if somebody is unhappy, as we've seen previously, they look at the building bylaw, they look at the charter, and they say, I wasn't given notice.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that we need to get into an amendment at this point. I would wonder if we could do it at second reading where that difference between what happens once you have an approved building permit needs to be spelled out more generally. And I think council might want to have a discussion as to the type of notice that we want to provide residents, given that we deal with so many residential units that are already built. And so we're effectively allowing building inspectors onto private property, private homes that are already occupied, but they might not be given notice, and we'd be very surprised to see a municipal official on their land. And I'd be curious, in addition, so you've got right to entry under the community charter. Somebody that then doesn't, imagine somebody doing construction on their property that doesn't have a building permit. You would need to give notice to them under the community charter in ways that you don't need to give notice to people that have a building permit. So it's like the people that are actually not going through the process in some ways have more protections than those that are from municipal officials entering onto the property unnoticed. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Councilor Giddings?
I believe, I haven't read it recently, but there was a fairly detailed report on bylaw enforcement with the trust, and I think they've ran into the same problem many times. It's a major problem. It's a major source of litigation, actually. And I'll double check all the references if I can find it. Right.
I think whatever we do, as long as it's spelled out and then it's educated to people that obtain a building permit at that time of permitting, would resolve some of the challenges that we've seen in the past. Any further discussion, Councilor Morse?
Do you know if this has been circulated to the people that have business licenses that are in the building trades? Do they know?
No, not widely circulated. I mean, I know we've discussed elements of it with, so we've discussed the pool fencing issue with people who have applied for pools.
Yeah.
And we've talked about the permit extension stuff with people coming to the end of their permit term.
I'm just wondering if we should be advertising it in news from. Yeah. So that the building trade people, if they've got any concern about, because there's some reference to using specific professionals as to whether those are the ones they would actually be using for something. And we might get comment on this entry bit. If somebody's doing something that's not safe, then you want them to have a stop work order and have it. Gets all done and sort of that.
Councilor Fast as the first time? No, we're
No,
the second and third time right now.
Yeah.
Okay. Over to you, Councilor Fast, followed by Councilor Giddings.
okay, I'm prepared to move the motion.
Okay.
Okay, so I move that bylaw number 700, 2025, cited as Bowen Island Municipality building bylaw number 489, 2019, amendment bylaw number 700, 2025, be read first time.
Moved and seconded by Counselor Getty. Any further discussion?
The minutes record that there may be some changes made at second reading, just so we don't lose them.
Officer.
Or you made a note?
Regarding the corrections.
Yeah.
Yeah, so our staff are aware of those.
I'll call the question then. All in favor, raise your hands.
Aye.
And that carries unanimously. Scrolling down here, we are now on 7.6 Islands Trust Council Bylaw 183 policy statement. Our planner joining us here today.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so I'm just here to introduce the draft Islands Trust policy statement referral request. I'll just do a quick introduction to the Islands Trust policy statement. We're outlining Islands 2050, and then which is the updating process for the policy statement. Then I'll briefly discuss what's new in the Islands Trust policy statement before going over the referral request and staff information. So the Islands Trust Act establishes the Islands Trust and requires the Islands Trust to set a policy statement that creates a policy framework for the planning and land use management of the Islands Trust areas and Bowen Island municipality. So the policy statement guides the development of official community plans and land use bylaws as well as some other bylaws. So our current Islands Trust policy statement was adopted in 1994 and was most recently amended in 2002. So policy statement bylaw 185, it was given first reading back in July. Original date deadline from the Islands Trust for referral was earlier this month, but they extended the deadline to January 2026. They expect to have final approval by fall 2026. So Islands Trust, their update process is called Islands 2050. The updating process has been ongoing since 2019 with several rounds of engagement taking place as well as engagement with First Nations. So just quick go over stuff that is in the new is in the policy statement. So there's guiding principles that establish the general consensus of Trust Council, and those are intended for Trust Council use. Directive policies, they're central to the objectives of the Islands Trust, and which any inconsistency with them bylaws would risk rejection from the Islands Trust. And advisory policies, which express their objectives of the Trust Council, but any inconsistency isn't intended to form the basis of a potential rejection if the land use bylaw was inconsistent. Yeah, it's just a quick overview of what's new. There's housing reconciliation and climate change, and keeps the ecosystem protection goals from in the current Islands Trust policy statement. So Island Trust has a bylaw referral form with 4 options for responses. Approval recommended for reasons outlined below, approval recommended for subject to conditions outlined below, our interests are unaffected by the bylaw, and approval not recommended due to reasons outlined below. So staff are recommending that council direct staff to prepare a response to the request indicating approval subject to conditions, and that council refer discussion to recommended to a future community meeting.
Thank you to the planner, Councilor Morris.
I'm a little concerned about the wording in the council direct staff to prepare a response to the referral request regarding Island Trust Council Bylaw 183 to indicate approval recommended for reasons outlined below. What if there's policy, new things that we don't want to recommend approval of? This is just asking for the ones we're recommending approval, so. I can't support the motion as it is, and if we're gonna refer it to a committee of the whole, which I think we should. And there's no imminent deadline at this point because their public comments and everything aren't due until February. So we could all have time to actually read it and compare it to the existing one and provide comments. Maybe things where we're okay with the general idea, but some of the wording is a little questionable, so. I would delete the second paragraph and just move the motion that it's be received and referred to committee.
Councilor Grady?
So on page 10 of this report, there's the trust's bylaw referral form response summary that gives the four options that the planner has referred to. So perhaps if the motion could be amended to refer to that, the recommendations of staff with respect to that summary. Some or all will be recommended and some may not be. Following our discussion on this, so it's not just. I understand what correct, Councilor Morris is suggesting, it's just limiting us to one in the motion, and there's actually four.
I'm not suggesting we limit us to one, I'm suggesting that whole second paragraph be removed.
Yeah, I think you're speaking the same language. It might be helpful, given the recommendation that Councilor staff to prepare a response to the referral request, maybe to breathe some life into what would go into that response. You know, like the approach that would be taken to make such a response, who might be consulted on a response like that. Just to give us the general direction, like the general sense of, okay, if we're gonna refer this to staff, instead of, you know, really getting nitty gritty with it on the council level, what does that actually look like and what would we expect to have come back to us? Yeah, so go ahead to the pattern.
So you need deep.
Sure. So if the direction is, we've got this policy statement draft from the Islands Trust. Council is going to make a referral to staff to prepare a response to it, and then come back to us. What would go into that response? What would the timeline of that look like? How would the policy statement be evaluated at a staff level, and what kind of considerations would go into it?
Yeah, so we still have a few months for the responses, referral responses due. So we're really just the reason we.
Yep, I think this would be best directed to our manager of development and planning.
I think what the intent of the recommendation is would be to bring a draft response to sort of help council discussion at the committee of the whole. We know that the policy statement itself is quite, you know, quite a beast, and as Councillor Moore says, like comparing it to the current one and trying to weigh all the pieces are quite lengthy. And so we thought having a draft response there for council as a piece of that committee of the whole discussion could be helpful. Part of the basis of what we started looking at was the there's a staff discussion in the report that talks about support for some of the policies around reconciliation and climate action, and so highlighting how those policies support actions that the municipality is taking to be sort of starting the basis of the response. And then I'll say too, we sort of had started working on this report and this recommendation at the time when our response was required tomorrow. Okay, we have to advances. We have more time now, but we still thought it would be helpful having a draft response for council like committee of the whole. Not that council has to follow it, but it sort of would start forming a response.
Right, would help frame conversation. I think particularly with the notion of, and I see both our trustees want to jump in here. I'm gonna squeeze a last question in, and then, I absolutely want to give both of you all your time, because I know you've been working on this really hard. But from the municipal standpoint, it's an interesting structure of the policy statement, the directive policies and the advisory policies. And I just want to ensure that, and I think it's great to bring it to staff and have that first sort of stab at it. And I presume that some of that would be an intersection of how those policies, impact a bunch of our already existing planning, particularly being unique as a municipality. We've got oodles of master plans, we've had, our own bylaws, et cetera, and even in my initial read of it, I mean, those directive policies would come to bear on a lot of that stuff already. So I'd love to have something that sort of frames up council discussion for that and provides us with some guidance of even how to approach a conversation at that intersection of municipality versus Island's trust policy statement, or not even versus, like this, together with the Island's trust policy statement. Okay, Councillor Getty, one of the gentlemen first, followed by.
I really like the suggestion about having a committee of the whole to have a broad discussion. But I would really like us to try and figure out how to advertise that so that we've got, if there is any kind of community interest in this, to beat the bushes and get, the OCP people, steering committee possibly, and other members of the community. Because we've decided that we didn't want to have the added expense of having the people coming over, the planners from the trust, to explain this to us. And so the only way that we're going to get feedback from the broader community, if there is any, is something like a committee of the whole. So I would look forward to that if we can try and publicize that somehow. Get people really interested in reading all this.
Thank you, Councillor Getty. Councillor Fast.
Again, I think because we were slowing down on the input. Bowen Islanders did contribute a lot of input in the early first few years. And then it got to the point where I was having to rope people in off the boardwalk and pull them in to talk to them. And they're going, no, I already gave my input. So I'm prepared to move the motion. I've just made a few changes to reflect what I've been hearing here that might be useful. So I move that Islands Trust Council bylaw 183 policy statement be received for information. That council directs staff to prepare a draft response. Sophie's got that. To the referral request regarding Islands Trust Council bylaw 183 period. Or semicolon. And refer discussions of Bowen Island municipalities' response to a future committee of the whole meeting.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
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 And that carries unanimously. Thank you, Planner, for being here today.
Can we get the committee of the whole sooner rather than later? I don't know I haven't looked at the agenda preparation, but in terms of going through the steps, preparing reports. Time consuming, and January is coming up soon enough, better than October the 10th. So that's my ask.
Okay. Looking at 7.7, moving on to 7.7, 2026, 2027 permissive tax exemption bylaw number 692. We have CFO possibly.
Well, thank you. Through the mayor to the rest of council. I'm here today to present the new draft bylaw for permissive tax exemptions. Permissive tax exemptions are properties that are eligible for property tax exemption based on one or more reasons in the charter. We are changing the permissive tax exemption this year to include two properties that previously weren't included. These two properties are two lots next to the general store where the municipality leases those properties from the private owner and provides community parking on those two lots. So we're providing a community amenity on those two lots. Now, ironically, by adding to the permissive tax exemption list, we're actually cutting the costs of tax expenditures for our residents, because the benefit of a permissive tax exemption is such that you don't only relieve the property owner of the municipal taxes, but you also relieve the property owner of all the other taxes. So school taxes, transit taxes, all of the taxes, except for Islands Trust, except for Metro Vancouver. Those two will remain to be redistributed to all of the other non-exempt properties on Bowen Island. So without an exemption on these two properties, effectively what we do is levy municipal property taxes in order to send them off island to those other governments. So by exempting them, it's a leverage mechanism to exempt the properties from not only municipal taxes, but all of the other taxes as well. So it's actually going to result in savings to the residents by adding these two properties. The total value of the exempted properties this year is 51 million, just over 51 million. That would result in exempted property taxes of approximately $123,000. And we do have a policy that limits the number of permissive tax exemptions granted to 1.5% of the previous year's property tax levy. So that comes in at 91% of that prescribed cap. I'm suggesting this bylaw be in effect for 2 years, for 2026 and 2027. And that way, the new council, when they are elected in 2026, they will have their first opportunity to review a permissive tax exemption and look at the impact, the financial impact to the community, and they'll have their chance to do that for the 2028 year. So that sitting in October 2027, they'll look at that bylaw again for the 2028 taxation year. This provides a little bit of certainty and stability for the groups that have the tax exemptions. And I think that's it. Oh, the advertising. There is a requirement to advertise a property tax exemption. So the advertising will take place in the undercurrent of October 17th and 24th. And then the bylaw is eligible for fourth reading and adoption by council on the 27th. That's it.
That's fast. Followed by Councilor Morse.
Thank you. This is a clear report. Thanks very much. I just have two questions about identities. I'm assuming we're sitting in the BIM annex, Bowen Island Municipality Annex. I'm
No,
wondering
that's
if that's-
the building that was built for the art gallery down there.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Art gallery. Yeah. And library, no, it's just the annex.
Just the gallery part, yeah.
Annex. Okay, gotcha.
Because
And,
we don't occupy that part.
Right. Okay. And Brookmere Garden Estates, I don't know what that is.
That's one of the two lots, the new ones that we've added.
Thank you.
Yeah, one of the two lots. That general store lot is actually more than one lot
Right.
out there. Congruent.
Yeah, I knew that. I just didn't know who they were.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councilor Morse.
I know you gave us a long explanation earlier about the parking and everything, but I'm not sure that this paragraph is going to be understandable to the general public
In the bylaw?
in the financial implications of the report. Because it's talking about forgiven tax revenue of approximately $123,000
Mhm.
to be redistributed to the remainder of the taxpayers in the
Correct.
municipality. So that to me means everybody's going to pay an extra $41 more, the way it's written.
I believe that's the case. If we didn't exempt these properties, then those properties would be contributing $123,000 of municipal revenue.
Okay, so I had thought there was something where we were actually going to be saving money because we had to pay the taxes.
That's just the municipal revenue piece. So normally I budget approximately $20,000 a year to remit taxes to all of those properties. On behalf of those exempted
Okay, so
properties.
that's not covered off in this report. So it's looking to people that they're going to be paying $41 more and we're not saving any money, but my understanding from the previous discussions was we would be saving money.
Oh, so what that delta is for another $20,000. Yeah, I can't do the math in my head, but otherwise we would, they would otherwise be co-paying somewhere between 41 and say 43 or 40.
So there is a net increase in taxes to them. I had understood from
No.
the previous presentation that taxpayers weren't going to be on the hook for anything more.
No,
and that
we're
the
going
new
to be
was
on the hook for
saving.
less. We're going to be on the hook for less. We now do not have to collect $20,000. We don't have a budget line item of $20,000 in our budget anymore that we use to pay the school taxes and the translate taxes on these two properties. But the overall cost of all of the exemptions, which is a number that we need it for our financial plan, is $41 per average property based on 1.25 million.
Well, if they're going to have to pay.
This is just the cost of all of the property exemptions, all of them.
We're already paying that. I think it's what you're saying.
That is the total forgiven taxes for all of these properties. So the municipal forgiven taxes forms 1608 of those, plus the value of the school taxes, which isn't reflected in this chart.
Back to you, Councilor Getty.
Might we then include a note in the explanation of the bylaw? That including Island Garden Estates, Brookfield Gardens Inc. Results in a net savings for the municipality, $1,000 from the school tax, something that.
I think it's another line in the report that I could add.
Okay.
I could add it and you could have that information for in time for fourth reading and adoption. I don't think.
Yeah,
I don't think it would go in the actual bylaw. It's kind of anecdotal information.
Somewhere.
Yeah, I could resubmit this report for the October 27th council report with the value of the 20,000.
Councilor Fast.
I'd like to make the motion because I think it needs to get out to the paper soon if it's like going to be advertised in a couple of days.
Yeah.
So I move that bylaw number 692, 2025, cited as Bowen Island Municipality 2006, 2007, permissive tax exemption bylaw number 692, 2025, be read a first, second, and third times.
Moved by Councilor Fast, seconded by Councilor Getty. Any further discussion? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
And that carries unanimously. Thank you to our CFO. Moving on to staff reports, 8.1, council policy and administrative director review and updates. Over to.
I move to defer. I've got probably half an hour's worth of discussion and questions to do.
Motion to defer. Okay, seconded.
Not gonna mess anything up.
No.
Maybe I'll let the staff to answer that question just as to the
It's
time.
not time sensitive, I don't think.
Okay, so let staff respond, please. Go ahead.
Through the chair, can we have any indication of sure if these concerns are and what is intended to be brought forward in conversation that cannot be discussed openly within this forum?
Part of my issue is it's now 4:15. The lawyers, I understand, are coming at 4:30. We have other items in the closed agenda. And I'm not sure whether it should be discussed in the closed or open forum.
You're good.
With the context.
Okay, Councilor Fast.
Two questions. One of them is, why couldn't we endorse the framework And second question is, I think this work has been going on for a long time. Sorry, my question is, don't you have to defer it until a particular date? If we're gonna,
Unless, I mean, there's
We're talking about policies, aren't we?
technically a motion to postpone. You can postpone to a certain date or you can postpone it indefinitely.
thank you. Okay, I would be prepared to make the motion. I don't have a problem with it.
Okay, so we have a motion to postpone on the floor. It's been moved and seconded, so we'll deal with the motion to postpone. Councillor Gay.
If I can speak to, I have problems with the second step that's in the strategy. In terms of, first we ratify that they've been repealed and then they're converted. That staff then will do a review and an update and get the CAO approval for amendments. And I'm uncomfortable with that process. So I think that there should be a larger discussion in terms of, I'd like a report from the staff in terms of the recommendations. And I'd like some input in terms of whether or not it should be pulled out of policy and direct us.
I'm okay to postpone. I think this will take some time based on what, some of my questions and comments. Not seeing further discussion on the motion to postpone. I'll call the question. All in favor of postponing, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Whatever.
That's a maybe. We'll take that.
No,
So, yes.
it was a, I'm in favor.
Okay, so that carries unanimously. We are on 8.2, award of contract for Snipe Cove Sewer Influent Intervention Program. We have our manager of infrastructure, Sarah, sorry to give it us today.
Good afternoon, to the mayor. So the report was prepared and I'm here to just recommend to award the project to Terry Lidell. If you have any question, I'm here to respond.
Okay, thank you. Questions for the manager of infrastructure? Councilor Gideon.
On page 3 of your report, if I can find it now, it reads, as the project progresses to field investigations and construction. And does the 162,000 cover any construction?
No, through the mayor, the $162,000 that we quoted here is not covered the construction cost. However, the investigation and all the equipment that needs to be prepared and go through the investigation is part of this 162,355, excluding the tax.
So it's the field investigations and all the equipment necessary for that. Because I think if there's going to be construction, and that's a later step, that's something that we have to discuss, both in context of budget and local costs and all the rest. It gets complex.
Other questions, Councilor Morse?
I wasn't totally sure. Is it going to include smoke testing?
To the mayor, yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
I move the motion. Find it.
I'll move it, if you would like. That council award the contract for Snug Cove Sewer System Inflow and Infiltration Reduction Program to Carewood Lidle, Edwardwell, 162,355, excluding GST.
By Councilor Fast, seconded by Councilor Wake. Any further discussion on this? Councilor Fast.
I just wanted to confirm, so of the 162,355, the Housing Accelerator Fund grant that we've received, we've already received that grant for 150,000?
To the mayor, I would ask, yes.
Okay, thank you. I just wondered if it was one of those ones that's kind of hanging there. Okay.
Yeah, but we're going for this kind of money. We got extra money for that specific program.
Oh, thank you. Very good.
Okay, yeah, I'm very satisfied to see this come to council. I know that the I&I question has been a hotly contested open debate in the community, so it would be fantastic to get some data on it and award it to a consultant that we haven't done much work with. So I appreciate the objective nature of obtaining that quote. Not seeing any further discussion, I will call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And that carries.
I,
Oh, thanks, Councilor Jurgensen, and that carries unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to 8.3 Committee Code of Conduct Policy, we have Steph Short, our Deputy Officer Committee Coordinator here today.
Good afternoon. Thank you for considering the staff report associated code of conduct policy. Staff drafted a committee code of conduct in alignment with councils, but with some specific elements regarding volunteer situations and a less rigorous enforcement approach. Council reviewed the draft on July 28th and September 8th in closed meetings. And discussion revolved around code of conduct, conflict of interest. Some of the edits implemented were regarding ensuring that volunteers are aware that they need to self-declare, ensuring that volunteers are aware that staff will support them with guidance, and ensuring that where volunteers are appointed due to their interest or their representation, that they verbalize this, articulate it at the meetings. The policy will be supplemented with an agreement that is signed by volunteers. And that is all I have to say on this matter.
Questions or comments from council? Councilor Getty.
I thought you were really responsive and that the end result that we've got here is really good.
The question I have, just so, and I know we've been weighed down in the conflict of interest piece, so I just want to make sure that it's right. And so when I look over the conflict of interest declaration here, which is sections 9 through 12. So we're saying committee members are subject to the same conflict of interest provisions as the community charter. First, to seek guidance if they're uncertain if conflict exists. We're saying that they must self-declare that interest, refrain from participating in discussions or voting, leave the meeting, avoid influencing the discussion or vote for. And then we also have this provision where they're here for their expertise, but they need to disclose it. So the work example that I was considering was the recent meeting of the Community Center Joint Management Committee, where one of the items on the agenda was in relation to sales of concessions at community center events that could be potentially be taken on by the Hearth. And you had the Hearth there that introduced that item attached by them, and they were also speaking on it and weighing in on that. So I'm curious if this is adopted, would that Hearth member be able to do that, or would they be required to leave the room, given that there's a pecuniary interest around concessions at the community center that they're advocating for?
My feeling around that specific committee is that, again, those members are appointed because of their interest and that the municipality is funding some of the role of operating the amenity and that it is in the municipality's interest to have that role fulfilled.
I'm just filtering it through the wording of our conflict here. Because in my read of it, we're saying that they actually must excuse themselves. So I do you see what I'm saying? Just using that example. So I'm wondering if in 12, it reads something like, well, maybe I'll refrain from the wordsmithing and go around council to see what some of the other thoughts are. I see Councilor Getty with her hand up.
Possibly we need to change the numbering so that 12 becomes 11 and vice versa, but in terms of the one that was happening at the JMC, it was like the Hearth wants to farm that out and wants to try and, they're, advertising for somebody to do it. They're prepared to do it at this point in time for the Hearts Presents series, but they don't want to be in that business. It's a moneymaker for independent, and they would love to have somebody that wants to cater that kind of thing, come in and pick it up. And they're not going to be able to do it for everybody. So, if we had discussed whether or not it was a conflict of interest at that committee in terms of a full disclosure to maintain transparency and public trust, then the process probably would have been whether or not the rest of the committee thought that it was potentially something that would be a conflict. So they're pushing something that they're going to get all the proceeds from. But it was the same committee had all of those discussions in terms of the part that you mentioned to me, whether or not I had conflict in terms of interests from the local production companies wanting to have more say in the terms of reference for the person that was hired. And I think that once we had a more detailed discussion about it, it was like, that's a valid concern and it's something that we need to take into consideration, but it wasn't where it was going to make a difference to the income of either. It was a scheduling issue. Right? So you can sort of, I think the committees are going to have some way of working around it. The other one was the housing in terms of, what was it, not having had a discussion in terms of somebody's livelihood that would have been directly affected. So I think that the important thing is to get the disclosure on the table in terms of, whether or not, and maybe the process is that the chair makes a decision or the committee makes a vote ahead of time, but not necessarily leaving the meeting. Being part, it's helpful to be part of the discussion.
I like the suggestion to switch 11 and 12. Just for somebody skimming it quickly. But a committee member of anybody they have to self-declare. So if we switch them so that 12 comes before what is currently 11, then it's acknowledged that their expertise is there and they can, it says full disclosure to maintain transparency. And then there can be a little bit of a discussion. And then the committee member can decide whether I think I'm in conflict. Sometimes it's hard to figure it out. So, and staff can always provide more training or a handout or something like this as well. But I think at this point, it would be good to have this adopted. And I think by switching 11 and 12, just the logic, the transparency will come first. And that would be my suggestion. If that's possible, then that might be enough.
It almost feels like there's just a slight tweak in 12 that has to happen, because when I think through the terms of reference of the various committees, there's only a couple of them that have organizational appointees. Right? And the Community Center Unit Management Committee is one of them. The Housing Committee, that incident, that person wasn't an organizational appointee. It wasn't like somebody from Birch. So something like, community members who are appointed to a committee owing to their organizational affiliation sort of are different than those captured in 9 through 11. And that section applies. When these are relevant to a discussion, members must practice full disclosure to maintain transparency. Like, they're there because of their organization, but we don't want them to be excluded because of that. But
that would work, especially if I like the distinction you're making between an organizational appointee and somebody, for example, on the design committee for the, for Snow Cove, which are architects and designers and, you know, specialists. Individuals with expertise.
Yeah.
But when you say organizational appointee, one suggestion is for organizational appointees under 12. Committee members should, instead of must, and just repeat 11. That's another idea, might solve.
Councillor Jurgensen, followed by Councillor Morse.
Great. I just wanted to point out that the Accessibility Advisory Committee also has an organizational appointee. And there's been discussion of adding a second organizational appointee from another organization to that committee as well. Just wanted to make sure to capture that in that context, often those appointees are advocating on behalf of accessibility users in the Bowen Island community, and just want to make sure that this doesn't restrict that ability to be able to advocate as part of the company.
Thank you, Councillor Jurgensen.
Is there any reason we have to pass this today? Because I can think of all sorts of other things where people might be considered, you know, it's reasonably regarded as a conflict. So maybe we need to send it back to staff and they need to go and talk to the lawyers. And I don't know, this kind of thing.
Yes, so a motion to refer back to staff. It's gonna take that as a, just to move us along here, so consider that move. I would second that. Any discussion on the motion to refer back? Not seeing any, all in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
And that carries unanimously. Thank you to our Deputy Corporate Officer. Moving on to section.
30, what are we doing time?
We are continuing the agenda.
Meeting organized with other parties.
Yeah, we're fine for now. They can wait.
They're happy to wait.
Report of committees, COW and commissions. 10.1 report on official committee plan steering committee business. Councillors Alex Jurgensen and Allison Morse.
Okay, just a minute. Councillor Jurgensen, I thought since I was the only one at the last meeting that I would do the report. Basically, when we started out in the project, we had phase 1 tasks, phase 2 tasks, and phase 3 tasks. And phase 1 was all about getting the background relevant information, and then this first thing in phase 2 was doing the community survey, and that's happened, and we're now looking at the next stage, which is starting to say, okay, one of the things we asked about in the community survey was vision and goals and what policy. So that's sort of the process we're at now, where we're looking at draft vision, what came out of the reports from the committee, from the communities, and starting to formulate some options and starting to get into phase 3, which is drafting an outline for the OCP. So that's sort of where we're at this point. And everybody's received the what we heard report.
Thank you, Councillor Morse. Anything you'd like to add, Councillor Jurgensen? No? Okay, any questions from council? Yes, Councillor David.
There was a suggestion that there's huge.
Nothing to add.
Councillor Jurgensen.
There was a huge amount of information that possibly needed more in-depth study that had come up, things like circular economy and different things that came up with the what we report. And I'm wondering if what's happening with that, whether or not that will look like and what the time frame is.
That's a question that we all have, and it's still out there to be resolved.
Lower than the trust.
Thank you, Councilor Morris. Moving on to new business update to Council on Metro Vancouver business. 3 meetings, there was the Regional Parks meeting, the board meeting, and that was held the same day as the House Sound Forum. The Electoral Area and Small Communities Committee meeting. For the sake of timing, all of those agendas are linked in our agenda. The only really interesting piece that was going on at the same time as the House Sound Forum meeting was that there was a vote at Metro Vancouver to completely revisit and review Climate 2050. So there's been a move from a number of board members to which is consistent with some of the actions over the last months, to get Metro Vancouver out of a variety of areas, and it seems like climate action is one of them in the name of affordability. So that's going to be some spicy conversations moving forward. Translink Mayor's Council, the meeting agenda is linked there. Very little that affects Bowen Island. And then I turn it over to our trustees for an update on trust business.
Well, I'll start. Thank you. You can see in Island throughout our agenda, for example, in 7.6, Executive Committee of the Islands Trust has been referring to or responding to referrals by municipal staff, acting as that extra layer of environmental protections. And the OCP amendments proposed also in 7. Oh, trust and the trust policy statement that we heard about from Planner Owl. Trust area services is in our agenda linked right there, the Q3 report. If you're wondering what is Bowen getting for its participation in trust area wide services, this is the kind of regional co-op services that Bowen participates in. Laura Patrick, chair of the Islands Trust, came to the Howe Sound Community Forum to present mostly about the trust policy statement, invited everybody there to have their input. And I'll just put in a little plug here too, that the Howe Sound Biosphere of Kitsum Biosphere hosts the Howe Sound Community Forum, and they're looking for input for the next 5 years. So if anybody's out there as one of the people who has benefited from having their styrofoam hauled away or some of the conservation measures, please fill in the survey online at the Biosphere. 12.23 in our agenda is Minister Boyle, Housing Minister, responding to Laura Patrick, Chair of the Islands Trust, about housing needs reports and how they're different. Looks like Bowen has the demand factor component that the Islands Trust does not. Number 6 here, Islands Trust may not be as speedy because their union staff are on strike currently in all 3 offices this week anyway. And so something to keep in mind. And we'll see whether Financial Planning Committee meeting happens next week, which I'm chair of, or not. Thank you.
I went to the quarterly meeting in Gabriel Island, September 16th to the 18th, and one of the highlights was a special presentation by Douglas White, who is a lawyer. He's a special counsel to the Premier on First Nations and reconciliation. He was very hopeful and supportive and pushing that we use the protocol agreements and get more of those, and that we use the legislation that's available to us in UNDRIP. So that was really good. The other highlights was the new CAO is doing a complete and detailed operational review for capacity and workload, and that's going to be really interesting. We're looking forward to that in the December meeting. He was supposed to have it done for September, but he's going more in depth. We also had lengthy discussions about housing, bylaw enforcement. We had a really, really good field trip to the recycling depot on Gabriel Island there. They've got a maker center that's really in-depth textiles, which I love. We did a lot of work on the policy statement amendment project, some work on the budget, Heritage Conservation Act, and the things. And we finally got wonderful 2022 governance review through with 3 out of the 15 recommendations that we're going to be focusing on. And the others, there's 6 others that are already in the works, and there's 4 others that we're going to be leaving until if and when we ever get the capacity. So we narrowed it down to 3, which is wonderful for the governance committee. It was a really good meeting, and we got through a little bit early, and it was surprising to everybody the fact that it even happened. So it was good.
Thank you. Any questions for the trustees? Not seeing any, moving down to question period. Any members of our gallery who remain or folks online would like to ask questions here today? No one online? Okay, and with that, I look for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councilor Getty, seconded by Councilor Saunders. Councilor Witt. All in favor?
I was doing it for him.
And